Good evening. In compliance with Chapter 551 Open Meetings of the Texas Government Code, I call to order an information session meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District for Thursday, November 10th, 2022 at 6:11 p.m. A quorum of the board is physically present at the AISD Central Office to conduct this meeting. Board meetings are open to the public based on space availability to ensure social distancing and the health and safety of our community and staff. This meeting is streaming live on AISD TV and Apple TV. It's also being broadcast on cable channel 22 through Spectrum, Astound Broadband, and on channel 99 through AT&T UVerse. Closed captioning in English is available on these platforms for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. To our audience tuning in remotely and here in person, welcome and thank you for joining us. We will move to the approval of the agenda. Acting Secretary Lugo, do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes, I move that we approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, having a motion by Trustee Lugo and a second by Trustee Anderson to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, the motion passes unanimously with a vote of 5 in favor by all those on the dais. Okay. Trustee Lugo, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag? Okay, so we have a president's report, and President Rodriguez he's actually going to be here shortly, so we are going to skip that for now, and we will move to general public comment. Oh, next is an opportunity for the public to share comments with the board. This time allows speakers to comment publicly on any topic of their choosing. We have time for up to 60 speakers, and as a reminder, the district continues to provide time during the regular voting meetings of the board to hear from the public about agenda items for consideration and vote. This is really an opportunity for the board to take part in active listening. While we wish we could respond or provide feedback, we are required to limit our questions to requests for clarification or follow-up directly to the administration. Members of the public wishing to participate in the public comment portion of our meeting called a dedicated AISD phone line in advance of the meeting to audio record their remarks. We will now play the recorded messages for public comment, so please listen carefully. Thank you.
I'm Joy Pentecoff, an AISD parent and leader with Central Texas Interfaith. I oppose the NXP application because they've been in Austin for 50 years and don't need tax subsidies to stay here. They make an annual profit of $11 billion and want tax breaks of over $100 million. Who gets to pay that $100 million? We do, Texas taxpayers. We're fed up with subsidizing corporate tax breaks while we just voted last Tuesday approving a bond for AISD. We're paying our fair share. NXP needs to pay theirs. Thank you.
President Rodriguez, trustees, and Dr. Mays, my name is Ali Katal. On behalf of the Austin Chamber and Opportunity Austin, thank you for your service and the opportunity to share my support for the Chapter 313 agreement with NXP. NXP has a long track record of investing in our schools, nonprofits, and environment. They have done this while also supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives to provide educational and career opportunities for area students. Your support of a Chapter 313 agreement with NXP will provide up to $63.5 million in funding to Austin ISD not subject to recapture, to help invest in teachers and students. It is a win for Austin ISD, parents, students, and our community. Thank you for your consideration and all you do for Austin ISD students.
Good morning, President Rodriguez, Board Trustees, and Dr. Mays. My name is Gary Farmer. I'm a resident in the district, and I own a business in the district. I'm calling this morning to ask that you support the Chapter 313 agreement with NXP. I believe this agreement will provide significant benefit to the district. Certainly, I've seen firsthand how 313s have significantly benefited other school districts in the state and in our local area as well. Maynard and Del Valle have both been beneficiaries of those. This agreement is going to provide a significant sum of money to the district that's not subject to recapture. I think also it will allow NXP to bring many dollars from Washington through the CHIPS Act to be invested in our community, and they're going to create great jobs for many Austin families. So respectfully, I would ask that you support this agreement. I thank you for your service, and I hope you all have a very nice day. Thank you.
My name is Carlota Garcia with Central Texas Interfaith, testifying against NXP's Chapter 313 application. The Texas statute governing Chapter 313 specifies that the fiduciary responsibility school board members have when voting on Chapter 313 deals must serve both the interests of the school district and the interest of the state. Section 313.025, subsection F, details that a proposal should be approved only if, quote, the governing body determines that granting the application is in the best interest of the school district and this state, end quote. NXP's Chapter 313 proposal will hurt Texas school children by depriving the state of $100 million over 10 years, reducing revenue available for education and other health and human services. This, along with the loss of over $1 billion per year to Chapter 313, hurts AISD school children and all kids across the state. Central Texas Interfaith calls on AISD trustees to fulfill their fiduciary responsibility and vote down the NXP deal.
Hello, my name is Jeff Thompson. I am a clergy leader with Central Texas Interfaith and a congregational member with AISD Parents. I'm opposing Chapter 313 because it's a failed program that currently costs Texas taxpayers at least $1 billion per year. A bipartisan group of state legislators and organizations like Central Texas Interfaith and its allies killed the reauthorization during the last legislative session because taxpayers should not have to pay for this from the state's general budget. This is $1 billion that could be going to schools. I'm asking you to oppose the NXP application to protect all Texas school children from losing funds to a large corporation, which will be very successful without our tax dollars adding to its profits.
I'm Edie Clark, retired public school teacher, AISD grandparent, and Central Texas Interfaith leader from Wildflower Church, opposing Project Gateway. I strongly oppose a 10-year tax abatement for NXP under the failed Chapter 313 program. I want NXP to pay its fair share of school taxes to fund our Texas public schools. As homeowners, my family and I don't get this kind of tax giveaway, nor does my daughter for her small local Austin business. With 313, NXP pockets all the money they would have paid in school taxes for 10 years. Big win for NXP and a loss for the other Texas taxpayers who don't get a tax break and make up the difference. Central Texas Interfaith leaders are public education advocates who have fought tirelessly in the Texas legislature for increased state funding for our public school system. Let's partner as allies to get more state funding for all our Texas public schools. I urge you to vote no on Project Gateway.
Hello, this is Ed Latson. I'm the executive director for ARMA. We're the Austin Regional Manufacturers Association. I'm also the chair of the AISD CTE Advisory Committee. And I'm calling on behalf of support for AISD providing a 313 agreement to NXP Semiconductors. This is such an important opportunity for our community and for the school district to support a critical employer in the region that's vital not only to Central Texas, but also the United States. The chips that are being made at this factory are strategically important to the success of our country, but it's also important to the success of our region. These jobs, average wage in semiconductor in Central Texas is $170,000 a year. And we've been diligent about creating pathways for AISD students to obtain these jobs through our manufacturing academy and work within our CTE advisory group. So I think this really furthers the success of our region, especially underserved students. And it's a great move for the school district.
My name is Debbie White, and I am a grandparent of AISD students and a member of a leader with Central Texas Interfaith. And I wish to say that I oppose 313 mainly because it results in less funding for education of Texas children. And educating our children is very important for everyone, including the business community. So I think you should vote against 313 exemptions all the time, and especially in this upcoming one. I also believe that exemptions cause our property tax rates to go up, and I am currently paying something approaching half of my income on the property taxes for my modest home in Austin. So please.
President Rodriguez, trustees, and Dr. Mays, thank you for this service and the opportunity to share my support for the Chapter 313 agreement with NXP. My name is Glenn Hammer. I'm CEO of the Texas Association of Business. I'm also a taxpayer in Austin ISD. NXP has a long track record of investing in our schools, nonprofits, and environment. They have done this while also supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives to provide educational and career opportunities for area students. Your support of a Chapter 313 agreement with NXP will provide up to $63.5 million in funding to Austin ISD, not subject to recapture, to help invest in teachers and students, help secure federal CHIPS Act funding to support a capital investment of up to $2.8 billion for NXP's proposed expansion in Austin, create hundreds of good jobs, and scale semiconductor production to drive down the cost of everyday goods. Your vote to support this agreement will reflect your sound fiscal stewardship aligned with your strategic plan. It's a win for Austin ISD parents, students, and for our entire community. Thank you for your consideration and all that you do for Austin students.
President Rodriguez, trustees, and Dr. Mays, my name is Laura Huffman, and I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for your service and congratulations on the passage of the bonds. I'm calling to express my support for your consideration of NXP's 313 agreement. NXP is an important part of our semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem in Austin. This is one of the hallmarks of our Austin economy, and in fact, our regional economy helps us grow jobs for the future and provide opportunities for students. Beyond that, this agreement and their investment would provide up to $63.5 million for you. That is not subject to recapture. It will help NXP secure CHIPS Act funding for their $2.8 billion investment, as well as create terrific jobs for Austinites. This is an important part of our economic strategy in the region, and I encourage you to support this application. Thank you.
I'm Michael Floyd, a leader with Central Texas Interfaith. I live in Austin, and my children have attended AISD schools. I oppose giving NXP a Chapter 313 tax abatement. First, it's bad for Texas schools. When the state reimburses local school boards for these tax giveaways, less funding is available for the system as a whole. Corporations making billions in profits get millions more at the expense of Texas school children. Second, it's bad for AISD. NXP's bribes do not make up for AISD's losses because of Chapter 313. and the short-term benefits are here today, gone tomorrow. We've just voted to support AISD's $2.4 million bond. It's unconscionable to ask us to pay more in taxes and at the same time let rich firms get away with not paying their fair share. Obviously, the whole educational finance system needs to be fixed. But if you use that to rationalize participation in a corrupt program like Chapter 313, you will alienate your main allies. Think carefully about it.
Good evening. I'm the Reverend Miles Brandon, pastor of St. Julian of Norwich Episcopal Church and a clergy leader with Central Texas Interfaith. My congregation includes AISD students, educators, and parents. Central Texas Interfaith is not an interest group representing an outside agenda. We are a part of the AISD community. We are, again, AISD students, educators, and parents. We're also your advocates and partners, fully committed to public education in our community. And so we implore you to choose your advocates and partners over corporations. When you choose to give away $100 million to a corporation rather than the state, it undermines and demoralizes your advocates and partners when we go to fight in the legislature for adequate and fair funding for AISD in all school districts. It also makes certain that there will be $100 million less to fight for. To believe that corporations are the solution to properly funding our schools is anti-democratic, undermines accountability, and ultimately will fail our children. Vote no on the NXP application. It is in our children's best interest now and in the future. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jose Guerrero, and I'm a leader with Central Texas Interfaith, and I'm an Austin taxpayer in District 5 and a former parent of 2 Austin High School students. My congregation, St. Ignatius Martyr Catholic Church in South Austin, also has several AISD parents and educators that are opposing Chapter 313. Now, I'm opposing Chapter 313 because of permanent jobs. For Chapter 313, they have extremely weak job creation and wage requirements and no worker safety requirements. Companies are only required to create between 10 and 25 permanent jobs, regardless of the size of the tax break. When I spoke with NXP, they could not guarantee that there wouldn't be massive layoffs like there was in the downturn of the economy in the early 2000s. These jobs are only required to meet 110% of the median manufacturing wage, and there are no worker safety requirements required under the state's Chapter 313. I'm asking you to oppose the NXP application to not only protect school funding for our children, but for school children across the state. AISD won't be alone if they kill this NXP application, as Elgin ISD and Point Isabel ISD recently killed Chapter 3.
My name is Marie, and I'm a parent. Our staff, students, and teachers need stability, but have not received that stability from the top. We disagree with this board's processes and decisions related to super and interim super post Dr. Cruz. We have faced a lot of change and upheaval in short proximity. Please help us now by intervening and staying all major decisions, including interim super, and employment decisions, until we are stable. We are also asking for an ombudsman. It has worked in our district before, and it is much needed now. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leonor, and I'm a leader with Central Texas Interfaith and a former AISD educator. I'm asking you to oppose the NXP application to not only protect our schools, our children, their families, educators, and neighbors, but the school children and families across the state. As Chapter 313 is set to expire in December 2022, over 500 applications are looking to get tax breaks before that deadline. We just passed 3 bonds, AISD, ACC, and City of Austin, which will benefit our schools. However, I ask you to be mindful that our community is now faced with an Austin energy tax rate hike and continues to struggle with excessive rent increases, high gas prices, and increased cost of groceries due to inflation. With Austinites already being hit with an increasing financial burden, why would you ask taxpayers to subsidize tax breaks for a profitable company like NXP? I'm asking you to deny the NXP application. Gracias.
Hello. AISD Board of Trustees. My name is Terry P. Mitchell. I am the founder of the Black Leaders Collective. I'm an Austin native and a product of AISD. I'm calling to commend AISD on the passage of the $2.4 billion bond. However, I'm incredibly saddened and shocked to hear the news of Interim Superintendent Dr. Anthony Mays' appointment as a lone finalist in another district. My question is, why was he not the lone finalist here? Under Dr. Mays' short tenure in AISD, he delivered on the promises made in June of this year. Dr. Mays has authentically engaged staff, students, and the community in two-way communication, and in doing so has reestablished a presence within this community that we have not seen in a very long time. He's seen the equity by design process through, and in August, TA reported that 82, more than half AISD schools improved by at least a letter grade. We, the community, will hold the board accountable for the same outcomes as was began under Dr. Mays' leadership, and I hope we get it right this time because we let a good one walk out the door. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello, I'm Mary Lynn Dixon, an Episcopal clergy person and a leader with Central Texas Interfaith. I have two grandsons at Davis Elementary, and my church has an active partnership with Travis Heights Elementary. I oppose Chapter 313 and ask you to reject NXP's application. Giving a major corporation a tax break is a real slap in the face to us taxpayers who have just passed propositions to pay more in taxes. And more importantly, Chapter 313 tax breaks negatively cost our local schools directly by loss of enrichment dollars, called golden pennies, 8 cents of every tax dollar. Over the years, that's real money. Plus, history shows that once the breaks time out, corporations revalue their investment to pay lower taxes even then. With a grandson in kindergarten, I'm invested in AISD for the long term, and I ask you to be too by rejecting NXP's Chapter 313 application. Thank you.
My name is T.A. Vasquez, a grandmother to a second grader at Palm, a retired AISD employee, and a leader with CTI. I wanted to highlight that you wanted us to invest in you, and we did by getting 3 bonds passed, AISD, ACC, City of Austin. We did all of this, and we still face excessive rent increases, high gas prices, high utility bills, and high cost of groceries due to inflation. We already pay our fair share in taxes, and now you're breaking our trust by considering giving away $160 million to a multi-billion-dollar manufacturer. Other local districts like Bastrop and Port Isabel have rejected it because they have learned that it is bad for their communities. I am asking you to oppose the NXP application to protect our children and all children across the state.
Hello, my name is Kurt Wyman. I'm a retired Teacher of the Year from William B. Travis High School in AISD, where I've taught physics for 10 years. I'm also retired from the Motorola Semiconductor Division, where I was an engineer for 30 years before it was acquired by NXT. I know their facilities well. I am a leader with Central Texas Interfaith, and I am opposed to NXP's Chapter 313 application because corporate incentives should not be sourced out of the Texas Education Fund. Please deny the NXP application. Yes, they need to upgrade their Austin facilities, but they don't need incentive money to do that. Their Austin facilities aren't going anywhere. Thank you.
I am Philippe Montier, the America's HR Senior Director at NXP. My job is to make sure that we have the brightest minds doing their best work. At NXP, so many understand that doing their best work also means being an active member in the community. Our employees have rallied year after year to give Christmas presents to over 600 kids at Rodriguez Elementary and Barbara Jordan Early College Prep. In the past 5 months, we have built an active and committed partnership to prepare students through the PTech and CTE programs for semiconductor jobs right after their high school graduation. At NXP, there are good paying jobs available at all education levels. Not only are there great jobs, but more importantly, great careers. It's great to see how we are evolving from providing Christmas presents to providing pathways to great technology careers. The NXP team is committed and excited to be part of the AISD mission. I appreciate your consideration for helping NXP bring more of these opportunities to Austin through your support of the 313 application.
Hello, my name is Elsa Rivera, and I am a leader with Central Texas Interfaith and a congregation member with AISD parents and educators. I am also the daughter and sister of educators in the state of Texas. Chapter 313 will give a tax break to billion-dollar companies. The tax dollars these companies are not paying hurt Texas schools, including the ISDs my sister and mother work for. Their school districts are already suffering from the lack of resources, and we are seeing teachers leaving their jobs across the state of Texas. Lack of resources and support that could be funded through taxing these large corporations has a major impact on our children and their education. I ask you to please vote against Chapter 313. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Gloria Vera Bedoya. I am the parent of a third grade student at Bow Valley Elementary. I am calling in to give a huge thank you to Superintendent Dr. Mays and the Board of Trustees that adopted the $2.44 billion package that we were able to pass thanks to voters. I would just like to say thank you to Dr. Mays for his amazing leadership, for taking the time to meet my child. Sharing with her this morning that Dr. Mays will be moving on from the district was a sad moment, but she's very proud to have met him, and I want him to know that, and I appreciate what he has done for our district. I appreciate the changes that I have seen come about, and I look forward to improving public education for all our students everywhere, but especially so for my little girl. Thank you, Dr. Mays. Thank you, Board of Trustees, and thank you to all the leadership of Austin ISD that works tirelessly to improve education for our kids.
My name is Trenton Hendrickson. I am a taxpayer and voter in Austin. I'm also a leader with St. Nations Catholic Church and a leader in Austin Interfaith. I would like to speak on Agenda 6.2. Please do not sign any new 313 agreements. We know an agreement with MXP will not bring new tech jobs to Central Texas. It will take funding away from public school students in Central Texas who will face competition for any new STEM jobs in the future. For 2 days ago, taxpayers entrusted you with $2.4 billion in bond funding. Are you really going to celebrate by giving away millions of dollars of taxpayer money to corporate friends? Don't betray the taxpayers' trust. Don't make any new 313 agreements. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. This is Eric Ramos from Martin Middle School, and I'm calling to ask that we publicly have a report on how sixth grade is going at the elementary schools that it was added, and how the middle schools who lost sixth grade are going, and not just a report that can be run, but actually data from students, families, staff members, and that we do it now in December and not wait till the end of the year and then scramble over the summer to try and figure it. If we start now, we have time to fix any issues that this has created that have not already been fixed. So again, I'm asking that we publicly at a board meeting, preferably the one in December with the new board, go over the data and see how sixth grade being removed from middle school, to middle school specifically, is going, and start working towards making sure that any issues that have arisen are fixed immediately. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Leah Kelly. I'm the parent of a student at Austin High School who receives special education services. My family lives in District 6. Over the last year, I have received several emails and witnessed case managers, administrators, and district-level staff repeatedly wrongfully share students' FERPA-protected information with me. I am asking the board and district to consider amending its operating procedures to align with this federal law protecting a student's right to privacy. I ask that the district fund a secure electronic system to share student-protected private information. I also ask that employees who violate FERPA face appropriate consequences. Thank you for considering how these systemic violations negatively impact our students and their families by eroding trust.
My name is Anna Sterling, a longtime Austin resident, a product of the AISD Independent School District, and a parent of a current student in the AISD. I'm calling to commend the AISD on the passage of the $2.4 billion bond. However, I'm shocked to hear the news of the interim superintendent, Dr. Anthony Mays, appointed as the long finalist in another school district. My question is, why is he not the Lone Star finalist here? Under Dr. Mays' short term in AISD, he delivered on the promises made in June of this year. Dr. Mays has engaged students, staff, and community in two-way communications. Under his leadership, we saw the equity of designs process come to life in the passage of the largest bond in AISD history. In August, TEA reportedly that 82, more than half, AISD students improved by at least one letter grade over the 2019 rating. Our students, staff, and community will feel the impact of his leadership for years to come. We, the community, will hold this board accountable for the same outcomes we begin to see under Dr. Anthony Mays. I hope you get it right this time, because we let a good one walk out the door. Thank you.
My name is Deloise Vasquez, and I am a leader with Central Texas Interfaith and a retired Austin Independent School District teacher and counselor, and a grandparent to a student at Austin High School. I'm opposing Chapter 313 because we recently supported and passed a $2.44 million bond for schools. By giving NXP, a major corporation, a tax break, this is a slap in the face to taxpayers who have already agreed to pay for our fair share. Now they want us to pay for NXP's share as well? Forget that. We refuse to foot the bill for corporations who don't pay theirs. And also, the corporate welfare program unnecessarily drains over $100 million in tax breaks to NXP away from Texas taxpayers and Texas schools. This is money drained from the system. The kickback to school districts are not worth the drain in the system. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lydia Moore. I'm a former teacher in the Austin School District, parent and grandparent. I'm calling regarding Chapter 313 application from NXP. AISD held two town hall meetings in which there was very little community support for NXP's Chapter 313 application for over $100 million in property tax breaks from the school district. There was strong community opposition to these town halls to this tax giveaway under the failed corporate welfare program that was killed during the past legislative session. Nearly 200 Central Texas Interfaith leaders called on the Austin School Board and candidates to vote against the NXP application at an accountability session held on October the 16th. Central Texas Interfaith calls on NXP to withdraw its tax break application or for the school district board of trustees to vote it down immediately. Given there's very little public support for this proposal, AISD and our community need to move on to more important matters that will benefit our children. Thank you.
My name is Everett Lunning. I am a leader with Central Texas Interfaith. I have been a teacher with Austin ISD. I have a granddaughter at Austin High School, and I'm calling to oppose the Chapter 313 agreement with the NXP Corporation. NXP Corporation, formerly Motorola, has been in Austin for decades. They don't need a tax incentive to stay here or to come here. Austin citizens just passed a bond issue in, well, it's a healthy number. And now a 313 agreement will call on the citizens of Austin to pay NXP's share of tax money too. This is corporate welfare. It's ultimately a corruption of the system. It costs the schools of Texas $100 million a year. Please vote against the 313 agreement this evening. Thank you.
My name is Mark Croker. I have worked for NXP Semiconductors in Austin and around the world for over 15 years, and I'm very excited about the possibility of NXP being able to expand its operations in Austin. Approving a Chapter 313 agreement with NXP would be an important contribution to helping make this happen. NXP has a history in Austin going back almost 50 years. We have 2 campuses located within the city limits, and several thousand of us work here. We have a long track record of investing in our public schools, our community colleges, and our universities. We are diverse, and we are proud of the work we do here together. In addition to helping to secure federal CHIPS Act funding to support a capital investment of up to $2.8 billion, your support for a Chapter 313 agreement with NXP could help create hundreds of good jobs within the reach of a diverse swath of our community, including high school graduates. I'm grateful for your service and for the opportunity to share my support for the 313 agreement with NXP. Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Interim Superintendent Dr. Mays. My name is Andrew Gonzalez, and I'm a former teacher and resident of District 6. I'm calling to first thank Dr. Mays for his service to ISD. Being superintendent of as large a district as the ISD is no easy feat, and I thank Dr. Mays for his contributions, and I wish him the best in his new role. Second, I would like to voice my opposition to Item 6.2, the proposed 313 agreement. The reason to oppose this agreement, I think, are many and varied. The well-documented and unsuccessful track record of 313 agreements with school districts across the state, the volume of 313 applications put forth this year, and the collective impact of so many corporate taxpayers in a single year on our state budget. And to expire at the end of this year. I would hope that those who seek to benefit from a well-educated workforce here in Austin would also meaningfully invest in that project and not attempt to opt out of it. Thank you for your consideration and your service. Second, I would like to voice my opposition to Item 6.2, the proposed 313 agreement. The reason to oppose this agreement, I think, are many and varied. The well-documented and unsuccessful track record of 313 agreements with school districts across the state, the volume of NXP applications put forth this year, and the collective impact of
made it loud and clear that we are willing to pay to ensure that AISD has the resources it needs to provide the quality education
at the end of this year.
Apologies for the technical difficulties.
The ISD invest in that project and not attempt to opt out of it.
Our children deserve. Most corporations and businesses in Austin are also willing to pay their fair share to educate their future employees. So why should Mother Minerva Camarena
I think there are many and varied, well-documented and unsuccessful track record of 313 agreements with school districts across the state.
We're waiting for about another minute or two for the technical difficulties to be resolved. Thank you.
As well as the fact that Chapter 313 is due to expire at the end of this year. I would hope that those who seek to benefit from a well-educated workforce here in Austin would also meaningfully invest in that project, not attempt to opt out of it. Thank you for your consideration and your service.
I am Mother Minerva Camarena Skives, Rector of St. John's Episcopal Church, leader with Central Texas Interfaith, AISD parent, and a taxpayer. Our community has passed the over $2 billion bond package. We have made it loud and clear that we are willing to pay to ensure that AISD has the resources it needs to provide the quality education our children deserve. Most corporations and businesses in Austin are also willing to pay their fair share to educate their future employees. So why should NXP receive a tax break and not be expected to pay its fair share of what it costs to educate children? NXP is a company whose profits are over billions of dollars. If NXP gets a tax break, we, parents, teachers, community members, and businesses have to carry a heavier burden to subsidize NXP. Say no to NXP who wants a free ride and say yes to your biggest supporters, the taxpayers who have passed the bonds and are willing to pay for a quality education for all children and who have shown no support for this Chapter 313 application in town hall meetings and information sessions.
Hello, my name is Paula Vaughn. I'm calling about Agenda Item 16.1,
acceptance of the NXP. I'm a volunteer at a local AISD school and a resident here in Austin. I'm extremely concerned about my taxes going to exempt the taxes of a wealthy corporation like NXP, whose profits last year were over $6 billion. NXP has been in the community for over 50 years and will probably still expand without this Chapter 313. I want more money to go to schools directly, which is why I supported the bond, but not to support tax incentive schemes, specifically ones with very little oversight and protections for workers. Thank you.
President Rodriguez, trustees, and Dr. Mays, my name is Gilbert Zavala. I'm Vice President of Education and Talent at the Austin Chamber. On behalf of the Austin Chamber and Opportunity Austin, thank you for your service and the opportunity to share our support for the Chapter 313 agreement with NXP. NXP has a long track record of investing in our schools, our community, and diversity initiatives to expand educational and career opportunities for students. Your support of a Chapter 313 agreement with NXP will provide a much-needed infusion of capital to the district of $63.5 million, not subject to recapture, to invest in our students and our teachers. It will help secure federal CHIPS Act funding to support capital investment of up to $2.8 billion for NXP's proposed expansion in Austin, and will create hundreds of jobs to benefit Austin families, parents, and students. Your vote to support this agreement is a win for Austin, a win for our community. Thank you for your consideration and all you do for Austin ISD students.
Hi, my name is Ramon Gonzalez, and I am a leader with Central Texas Interfaith and ISD parent. I'm opposing Chapter 313 because in a long time the district will lose more money, and because the property taxes will be increasing. I asking you to oppose the NXP application to not only protect our school children, but the school children across the state. Thank you.
My name is Kathleen Davis, and I'm a leader with Central Texas Interfaith, also a parent of 3 adult children who graduated from Austin ISD schools. I'm calling to oppose the Chapter 313 application by the NXP Corporation because it will not benefit Austin ISD, and it will, in fact, take tax money away from things taxpayers' money could be spent on. It diverts potential funding from schools, including Austin ISD, and is bad for public schools around the state of Texas. NXP is already in Austin, and there is no reason to think that they need additional funding for any expansion that they plan. Research has shown that the Chapter 313 is a failed program, and there was bipartisan support at the legislature to not continue it. So again, I ask that you oppose this NXP application. Thank you for your consideration.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Elizabeth Otero y formo parte de la organización Central Texas Interfaith y soy madre de familia. Estoy haciendo esta llamada para manifestar mi oposición al capítulo 313 porque estuve presente en una reunión el pasado martes 18 de octubre donde los representantes o expositores de este tema pues no nos dieron respuesta a todas las preguntas que teníamos. No fueron claros, no fueron, sí, sobre todo claros. Yo tengo muchas preguntas al respecto y pues realmente no estoy de acuerdo en apoyar el capítulo 313. Creo que este es un proyecto que a largo plazo nos perjudicará más que lo que nos pueda beneficiar, sobre todo en el aumento de las taxas. Creo que no hay el beneficio que se quiere aparentar decir que vamos a tener. Me opongo al capítulo 313. Gracias.
This is an English interpretation of Elizabeth Otero's message. Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Otero, and I am part of the Central Texas Interfaith Organization, and I am a parent. I am making this call to express my opposition to Chapter 313 because I was present at a meeting last Tuesday, October 18, where the representatives or presenters on this issue did not give us answers to all the questions we had. They were not clear, specifically not clear. and I have many questions in this regard, and I really do not agree in supporting Chapter 313. I believe that this is a project that in the long term will harm us more than it will benefit us, especially in the increase of taxes. I do not believe that there is the benefit that they pretend to say that we will have. I oppose Chapter 313. Thank you.
My name is Enrique Saenz. I am a taxpayer and a resident of Austin, and I live within the AISD district. As a lifelong resident of Austin, and therefore a taxpayer, a graduate of AISD, and a person who believes in the profits of a quality education and an educated workforce, I am joining in the call to deny the 313 application from NXP. Like the president said yesterday, the well-off need to do their share of carrying the financial load in communities where they are located and operate. I wholeheartedly agree with him. I am a leader with Central Texas Interfaith, and they, as an organization of schools, churches, small businesses, unions, and citizens, are also very opposed to this unfair tax giveaway. Again, I concur. Take care of our interests and protect the future of our school district and its teachers, employees, and most of all, our children. Let big money operations like NXP and all the others join us in caring for the future generation.
AISD Board of Trustees, greetings. I am Autumn Cavanis, and I have lived in our beloved Austin for quite some time. I've also had the wonderful opportunity to work with myriad phenomenal students who are graduates of the Austin Independent School District. Firstly, I am calling to commend Austin ISD on the passage of the $2.4 billion bond. That is extraordinary. And I'm also calling because I am shocked to learn the news of Interim Superintendent Dr. Anthony May's appointment as the sole finalist in another school district. I am curious, why is Dr. Mays not the sole finalist here in our beloved Austin? AISD Board of Trustees, Dr. Mays has delivered on all of the promises that he made since this past June. He has authentically engaged students, staff, and our community in open, honest, and transparent two-way communication. And in doing so, Dr. Mays has reestablished a presence within the community, within our community, that we have not seen in a long, long time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I wish to remain anonymous during this phone call. However, I would like to provide some comments regarding the leaving of Interim Superintendent Dr. Mays. I grew up in East Austin, so I'm very familiar with the Austin community. However, upon hearing that Dr. Mays was leaving, there are some concerns, and I would like to provide some feedback. Dr. Mays was incredibly instrumental in passing the AISD bond for $2.4 billion, and this happened under his leadership. I really commend Dr. Mays for engaging with the students, engaging with the community, allowing us to see his face and allowing us to know that he's there to help. It's incredibly discerning to me to know that Dr. Mays wasn't the lone finalist and we're losing him to a school district, granted in a different city, but the Austin community deserves him. The students deserve him. We will be doing an incredible disservice to particularly the students in the community, not for them not to see an African American.
Hi, my name is Dora Trevino. I'm a leader with Central Texas Interfaith and a graduate of Anderson High School. I am opposing Chapter 313 because we just passed 3 bonds, AISD, ACC, City of Austin, and Austin Energy rate hike. On top of this, we face excessive rent increases, still high gas prices, already increased utility bills, and increased cost of groceries due to inflation. With Austinites already being hit with an increasing financial burden, why would we ask our taxpayers to subsidize tax breaks for a profitable company like NXP? I am asking you to oppose the NXP application to not only protect our school children, but the children across the state. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Hello, my name is Lisa Flores. I am a parent. I would like to ask the school board to consider the formation of an independent, neutral ombudsman's office to assist students served by special education and their families. There are 11 levels of help available to campus-level representatives in our committees, including taxpayer-funded lawyers. There is little to no assistance for the student or families who find themselves having serious issues related to special education. Providing a copy of procedural safeguards is not enough. Many of you received an email from me recently about a serious situation particular to my son, and to date, no assistance has been offered. The creation of an ombudsman's office is a reasonable step to build trust and to give families assistance that should be given by the district as a recipient of federal funds. This is not happening. The vision does not meet the reality. I also want to ask the board to ensure 20% of ESSER funds have been or will be used to help underserved populations such as those third graders who have grim reading and math scores presented tonight. It looks like AISD can afford to hire new executive positions. It's worthwhile to see if MTSS could be expanded to provide more mobile supports to kids, such as the one struggling in item 5.1. It is not reasonable or strategic to push the responsibility of remediation onto overworked teachers solely. Thank you.
President Rodriguez, trustees, and Dr. Mays, my name is Susan Nold, and I'm calling on behalf of the Austin Chamber and Opportunity Austin to thank you for your public service and to share my support for the Chapter 313 agreement with NXP. As you all know well, NXP has a long track record of investing in our schools, supporting nonprofits, and protecting the environment. Your support for their agreement will provide tens of millions of dollars in funding to AISD that's not subject to recapture, and expanding the opportunity to invest in teachers and students locally. It will help the company draw down further investment from the federal government from the CHIPS Act, expanding their capital investment and manufacturing capacity in Austin, and create hundreds of good-paying jobs that they're just the kind that we want our students to have access to when they graduate from AISD. Your support for this agreement will reflect your sound fiscal stewardship that is aligned with the strategic plan that you all have set out for the district. It's a win-win for Austin ISD, parents, students, and the community. Thank you for your public service and for your consideration.
Okay, this concludes public comment. Trustees, are there any questions or clarifications? Trustee Anderson.
I have, questions that I would like follow-up to, please. The caller that mentioned FERPA and SPED, I get really concerned when I hear someone says about educational records and a student's information possibly being exposed. So my question is, what system is in place to prevent this from happening? And furthermore, what training have those who deal with those type of records have received, not just one time, but ongoing, to make sure that information isn't breached? And I have a point of personal privilege. I wanted to give a huge good luck to Northeast Early College High School football team who done made the playoffs, and they will be headed to Belton. And I'm happy to serve as your trustee, and I wish you bring it home. That's what I say, bring it home.
Any other trustees? Okay. Tonight we will, thank you, trustees. And as a reminder, please feel free to share any general comments or questions on non-voting items with the board by email at trustees@austinisd.org. All right, tonight we will discuss scorecard items 2.1 to 3.1, third grade, beginning of year, map, reading, and math. So Dr. Mays, could you introduce our item?
Sure. We have our awesome team making their way up, Ms. Costas, Mr. Hicks, and Ms. Petrozzini. and they'll be sharing with us, again, what we're seeing with our beginning of the year reading and BOY, reading and math scores. We'll be sharing some of the highlights as well as some of the areas that we need to intervene and make some course corrections. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Ms. Casas.
All right, good evening. Good evening, trustees and Dr. Mays. It's good to see everybody tonight. So today we are going to talk about Goal 2 and our goal progress measures for it, and Goal 3 and the goal progress measures. And as a reminder, these goals are aligned with our HB3 goals. Next slide or page. So it sounds like technical difficulties are going to be the name of the game tonight. So this data you've seen in September when we did the overall presentation on the progress of our scorecard. For these two goals and the goal progress measures, you see that we met the targets for 5 out of the 6 targets, missing the one which is on reading for African American students that are identified as economically disadvantaged. We missed that target by 3 percentage points. And this is at the end of the year looking at the state test and our MAP scores for the end of the year of for this 21-22 school year. Okay. The next page shows the graphs of how we did compared to the state. And for reading, you see that we increased the rate similar to the state. Austin ISD was at 13% increase compared to the state at 14% increase. And then for math, you'll see, the next one if you scroll up, on math, you see that our students increased at a higher rate than the state. For math, we increased 16% compared to 11% at the state. Okay, and then if you'll scroll down to Table 1. Again, the goal progress measures are looking at the students who are African American identified as economically disadvantaged and Hispanic students economically disadvantaged. And you see the band in light yellow of where we are at the beginning of this year. So you'll see that 10% of the 206 African American students that are economically disadvantaged are on grade level. And that's 19 points from the target of 29%. For Hispanic students, we're at 13% of the 1,098 students that are on grade level, and the target is 28%. So we're about 15 to 19 points from our target. And then again, as we've done in the past, Table 2 shows we're looking at on grade level, and we're also looking at the percent of students that are meeting their growth targets. And I believe you have the new scorecard that was printed that has the yellow highlights. We noticed that the scorecard that was posted had the numbers for all students, and these are specific to our third grade students. So you'll see the growth targets are measured looking at our current third graders at the beginning of the year compared to when they were in second grade at the beginning of the year. So you'll see that for our students at the all level, 58% of the students met their growth target. And then for our economically disadvantaged students, 59% at the all compared to 57% of our non-economically disadvantaged. And you see for our African American students, 50% of our economically disadvantaged students met their growth target compared to 55% the students that are non-economically disadvantaged. And for our Hispanic students, you see that the same percentage of 60% met their growth target whether they were economically disadvantaged or not. And then Table 3 shows the same breakdown for math. You see the numbers there. There's a large gap from where we are currently to where we need to be by the end of the year. The targets are set at 21 and 23%. And you see for our students that are African American, economically disadvantaged, 4% of the 210 students are on grade level compared to 7% of the 1,345 Hispanic students that are also economically disadvantaged. And when you look at Table 4, we see how does that compare to how many students were meeting their growth targets. And what's interesting here is you look at the all column. So whether your students were economically disadvantaged or not, they were meeting their growth targets at the same rate. For African American students, actually, students that are economically disadvantaged, 51% of them met their growth targets compared to 48% of their non-economically disadvantaged peers. And you see the same trend for Hispanic, 56% of the students met their growth target compared to 58 of the non-economically disadvantaged peers. And then you scroll down a little bit, so we say what's the status, and we are below where we should be for reading and math. And so that caused us to do a lot of data digging to really understand, well, what does that mean? What's the story that we can tell about our current third graders? And so, Dr. Reach, if you'll transition over to the PowerPoint, and here I'll give you. And then I'm going to have Ms. Heather Petrozzini, who's going to walk us through some of the data, and Mr. Gilbert Hicks.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So I'm going to start off by kind of contextualizing this group of third graders. This is the group of third graders that in March of 2020, they left school on March 12th, and they did not come back to face-to-face instruction for a very long time. Some of them finished the year remote and came back in October when we came back face-to-face, but then some of these students have stayed remote for a much longer period of time. So imagine that. You are 5 years old, you are learning your letters and your sounds, you are learning to read, you are learning to blend, and then you go remote, and all of that instruction is now happening virtually. And where you are in March of kindergarten is a critical moment, and we know that first grade as well is a critical moment. And so these students, some of them have only had, up until now, 1.5 semesters of face-to-face instruction in the classroom. And we share all that with you to provide context for the data and really understanding how we can best support our learners moving forward. Next slide, please. So our third graders currently have a lower starting point than last year's third graders. So this graph shows you on the left this year's third grade map reading at the beginning of the year testing window. The graph on the far right, or the column on the far right in pink, is last year's third graders at the beginning of the year. So you can see every group, with the exception of our white student group, is starting off a little bit lower. However, our African American student group, there is a 6% difference there, and that is the highest gap in that area. Next slide, please. So we also wanted to look at this data by cohort. So think of the class of kindergartners who went remote March 12th, 2020. That is the class, Austin ISD class of 2031. This is their performance from last year to this year. So if you look at the red bar indicates where they were in second grade, and the yellow bar indicates where they are now. So in 4 of the 5 student groups, they're actually doing better than they were this time last year. You see that the yellow bar is higher than the red bar. Now, our African American student group, we see that that is not the case, and that we're currently in a lower position than we plan to start from. Next slide, please. So we wanted to show it again in a different way too, though. And as Chief Casas was talking about, you'll see that the growth that is happening for this group of students is also exactly where we want it to be. So when you see the purple bar, it is sinking the yellow diamond. And that we've shown you this graph before. I think we showed it in August as well. And so for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, they currently are making the expected growth that we would want them to make, with 4th grade actually far surpassing. Next slide, please. I'm going to pass math off to Mr. Hicks.
Good evening. With regards to math, we want to look at the data in various ways, as well as we did with reading. So this particular graph looks just like the one that we went over for reading just a moment ago. It's a historical third grade map growth with math on grade level. So we're comparing this year's third graders to last year's third graders. So it is 2 different cohorts. So on the far left in the pink, that is this year's third graders, and a pink column.
I'm
and
sorry,
on the far,
Mr. Hicks. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we don't have quorum right now, so we actually have to pause
Okay.
for a moment. I'm terribly sorry. Oh, never mind.
Do I need
Play.
to start over or just
Nope.
start? Okay. So far left are this year's third graders, and that's the highlighted yellow column is what we're going to look at for the economically disadvantaged. And on the far right pink column is last year's third graders, and we'll look at the highlighted column as well. And what we want to show you is the different starting points that those two third grade cohorts had. So we note that while the outcomes are not significantly higher than last year, most student groups are either at a higher starting point than last year's student groups, or they've remained the same. So for example, you see that last year's third graders started at 9%, and this year's third graders started at 16%. And then you can follow that down each one of the columns. Next slide. So we also, and again, in looking at the data in various ways, want to compare this year's third grade group to last year's, to where they were in second grade of last year. So we're comparing the performance by looking at the far left column. Look at the all column, for example. That's the red bar. That is the last year's when they were in second grade, and then the yellow is this year's third graders. So you can see that the performance did drop for them. There's a negative trend line across all student groups. You'll remember that this was not the case in reading. And we know that in reading, though, the reason for the difference, we believe, is that the skills spiral in reading. So, for example, a student that mastered inferring, they'll experience that skill across grade levels, but it'll just be increasingly complex text over time, but it'll be the same skill. But the thought process required, then again, is the same. Whereas in math, the curriculum is such that they learn discrete skills over time, and the skills become increasingly complex and they're different. And so that adds to the complexity of them being able to improve, considering all the context that Ms. Petrozzini provided earlier for what was happening with this group of students. Next slide. So again, with the progress and the growth summary, the diamond is what is important. That is where the expected level of growth is. And so if you look at third grade, we're right on target with regards to the diamond. I've been hearing the term sink the diamond is what we're looking to do. And so we did sink the diamond in fourth and fifth grade and in second grade, but we're on target in third grade. And note that there's not a diamond for kindergarten because there is no comparative data for them. Next. Okay, so take a deep breath and switch a little bit, but it is connected still when we think about our culture of professional learning communities in the district, and that's what we're going to talk about for a couple of minutes. And I wanted to specifically say culture of professional learning communities because I've been hearing a lot of people lately refer to PLCs as though they are a thing, and I want to begin to shift that narrative into it being a culture of how we do things, how we collaborate, how we perform business around here, how we do instruction. And so if we look at those three colored circles in the middle and we think about why we get up and come to work every day, all of us as educators, we want to ensure that we have student outcomes, results, and that all of our students learn, no matter where they are, who they are. That's it for every single one of them. And we do that through a culture of collaboration and working together, all teachers, all educators. I always say that there are two different jobs in the district only. You're either a teacher or you're supporting teachers. And that's it. And so many of us have that role of supporting teachers, and that's what we should do and do it well. And that's what our goal is. So in the culture of professional learning communities, with those three circles in the middle, there are certain questions that you ask yourself around how you're going to ensure that all students learn and are able to perform. The first major question is, what do we want all students to know and be able to do? Now, I have to take a step back and say that I, as a longtime educator, think that that's pretty obvious what the answer to that question would be, but I'm not going to make that assumption tonight. The state publishes Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, which are the standards. That's what every student should know and be able to do at whatever grade level and whatever subject that they are taking at that particular time. So it's important that we focus on that when we're thinking about what we're going to be doing in our culture of professional learning communities. That's the very first question. If we don't know exactly where we're going, we'll never get there. So secondly, we have to know how we're going to know that students have learned what it is we intend for them to learn. And we do that through ensuring that we have quality assessments that are ready to go. Lots of times you'll hear the terminology such as begin with the end in mind or planning backwards. And so that's what we like to do. Start with what it is that you know that you want your students to know and be able to do, the standard, know what the assessment is going to look like, and then ensure that you're teaching to the rigor of that assessment and to the rigor of the nouns and verbs that are included in that standard. So also, I know that what I just said, nouns and verbs, I don't want you to think we're talking about diagramming sentences out of the TEKS. So, and I don't even know if anybody in this room knows what diagramming sentences is all about. That's from a long time ago. But it was fun for me when I was in school, but that's not what I'm talking about. So what I mean is that the nouns and verbs are extremely important in the standards. And I'm going to read an example of a standard from social studies in 6th grade. And think about if you're a teacher and this is the standard, this is what you're expected to teach. Your kids are expected to know how to do this. It's extremely important that I, as an instructional leader, or I, as an educator, stick to the rigor of this standard. Compare and contrast free enterprise, socialist and communist economies in various contemporary societies, including the benefits of the U.S. free enterprise system. So the verbs, compare and contrast. That's what we need to be doing when we're teaching. And then all that tier 2 vocabulary, that academic vocabulary, that really just means it's vocabulary that you don't use in everyday language. Nobody walks around talking about the socialist and communist free enterprise systems or anything like that when you're just having a conversation with friends. So all of that, it's extremely important to teach that in such a way that people truly understand and the kids understand and are able to apply that when it comes time to show their learning. So how will we know that all students have learned it and learned that type of a standard? Really important. And then the third question is, okay, so we've done all this work, we've assessed, and then we have data. And so we know now that some students didn't learn. So what are we going to do about those students that didn't learn it? There are lots of opportunities for us to either reteach it, to intervene in some other sort of way, or to reteach it. And it's really important that we plan for that in that culture of professional learning communities that I talked about. When teachers are meeting together and collaborating, they're talking about what information, what data they've received, what the student work looks like, what the assessment scores are, and then making plans for what they're going to do about and respond to the data. And then finally, you're also going to have a group of students that did get it. And you don't want to forget them. We don't want to have them sitting in the back of the room while we're reteaching or intervening. We want to ensure that we're pushing them forward and that we're enriching their learning as well. So what do we do with students that have already learned it? All of those 4 questions really form the foundation of the importance of that culture of collaboration and that culture of professional learning communities. Next, please. So just as an illustration of what that looks like over the course of a week of professional learning communities, whether it be an elementary school with the 2 dedicated professional learning community days, or the culture of professional learning community days, or in a secondary school where they have multiple days beyond that as well. We really want to make sure that our teachers are doing for our students what they need to do and are able to make those connections between looking at the data and then looking at the planning and how that planning is going to be impacted by the data. So one day is devoted to what we call looking backwards with the data. And that means that they will be reviewing the progress of students, looking at the assessment scores, making determinations about what's going to happen next as a result. Remember, the third question is, what are we going to do if students do not get it? So they use the data to do that. Now, the data is not all numbers. It's not just the scores that come back from the short cycle assessments, or the scores that come back from map growth, or the scores that come back from the common assessments, or the scores that come back from the unit tests, or the scores that come back from the pop quiz, if anybody's doing those anymore. It's also looking at student work, looking at the anecdotal notes of the teacher, looking at the running records, looking at what we call the DRAs, the diagnostic reading assessments. You have tons of different data that you can utilize to make a decision about what's next for your particular group of students, or your individual students actually, because we really focus on making learning personal for every single student. That's one day that they're doing that with their groups of kids and working together with teachers. And then the second day of that professional learning community time, they're looking forward, and that means they're planning what's going to come next. Let's make sure that all of us on this team understand what the standard looks like. Let's unpack it together. Let's understand those nouns and verbs. What does it mean to compare and contrast communist societies and socialist societies and the free enterprise systems? So you're working together to do that. We've shown you in previous meetings our know and show charts, where we talk about what it is we need students to know and be able to do and what that's going to look like from a teacher's perspective in planning, and then what are we going to be expecting students to be able to show us that they actually know that. And then we also look at where the multiple entry points are for kids with regards to this looking forward, because we have to plan and differentiate for emergent bilinguals, special education students that receive special education services, students that receive gifted and talented services, and so forth. So teachers work together in that culture of collaboration and the professional learning community culture to ensure that they are ready for their kids and that they're doing what they need to do in order to ensure that all kids learn. All kids learn. That's what's really important, that we have powerful outcomes for every single one of them. So the power of the first teach is important. If we can make sure that we touch and ensure that 85 to 90% of kids get it on the first time around, that reduces the number of kids that need to be in interventions. And that's a strong goal of working together to ensure that we have good planning occurring and that it's impacting learning.
So where does that leave us now? I think really our aim is for higher horizons for all of our students, not just the students we're talking about today, but all of the students in AISD. Something that has been reiterated a lot recently is it's shared accountability, right? It's not just on the teacher, it's not just on the campus principal, but it's all of us. And so moving forward, we're really looking at a curricular assessment and making sure we have the right resources and the right supports on campuses so that there is that strong first teach. It's very hard for those of you that have been practitioners to just whip that out of your head. It takes a while to build that up and learn it, as well as creating a numeracy pathway so that we can also develop the content knowledge in our staff to really build those foundational math skills. We're also working on tightening up our MTSS and RTI process so that we have that strong Tier 1 and that you can get intervention even within Tier 1. It's about a prevention model, not waiting till we get to the point of we need to intervene. We want to make sure that it's okay if you don't always get things on the first time. I'm sure all of us have experienced that. You don't always get it right on the first learning or on the first teach, but we're going to support you in doing that and acquiring that new knowledge. We're also bringing in Mike Mattis. He works for Solution Tree. He's sort of an RTI expert at the end of January, so he's coming in to work with our academics team, and we'll really be kind of highlighting and rethinking how we are accessing prevention for all of our students. And by doing all of that, we believe we'll have a greater alignment within Tier 1. We'll be continuing our work with Dr. Stetson, kind of making sure all these arrows are pointed in the same direction.
The only thing I would add is that we're launching the just-in-time professional learning. So we do know that our Title I schools have high number of brand-new teachers. So the just-in-time training will be little vignettes on the upcoming learning that they will have to do so that teachers can have somebody walk them through the curriculum guides. And here are some things to think about. Here are some things that you should know for prerequisite skills. Having that personal touch, because obviously we don't have enough coaches to go into every campus, so we are going to make this available for all of our Title I teachers in our elementary grades, and we're planning to launch that in January. Yep, because we're trying to think of how can we get to our teachers, because we can't pull them out because there aren't any subs, and so this way it'll be ongoing training that they can access pretty regularly to prepare them for the upcoming lessons. So we're going to have to be strategic about being 2 to 3 weeks ahead so that teachers can have time to review it. So when they go into their professional learning communities, they're prepared to contribute and to engage in the learning. Because we talked about one of the challenges of having a lot of new teachers is you only know what you know. And so then it's incumbent upon us to figure out how do we keep building content knowledge and pedagogy so that when they are in the PLCs, they can help each other and build off of their learning. And so that concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much. Trustees, are there any questions? Trustee Anderson?
Thank you for this presentation. Excuse me if I go on a little rant. I've been up since 2:30. So, my question and my concern, I know you spoke a little about African American students, and then you got kind of general. But what I did not hear is what specific efforts for African American students. If we see that, you know, you didn't meet the target, so what are we doing? What systems are we putting in place at the elementary, middle, and high school to ensure that those students who are struggling get the support that they need? And I'm going to tie that to programming. So we have all these wonderful programs, and if I as a student can't read, how can I participate in health science or in Ready, Set, Teach? So what are we doing?
Thank you, Trustee Anderson, for that question. You're absolutely right. You have to be able to access the curriculum to have any hope to participate in the programs that you're mentioning. So one of the entry points is to ensure that you have a strong connection with your teachers and that you feel like you are connected no matter what grade you happen to be in. So I think relationships are extremely important. And then it's important to know exactly where a student happens to be and to have good data on that student and to implement targeted interventions to ensure that we take care of them. But it has to be personal. It can't be a generalized plan where the entire class gets what the one student that's struggling gets what the entire class gets. So I know several years ago we had a strong effort towards our African American Achievement Plan, and we're looking at that again, where it was very targeted towards the group of African American students that were struggling, and we had specific strategies in place. We still have those strategies working right now, but we don't have them in a plan per se, but we want to revisit perhaps doing that again. And that targeted intervention was a strong part of that, along with the strong first teach to go with those students, but it was individualized and making sure that we really targeted the kids that were struggling and that were behind, and not just doing general teaching with them.
I am concerned. I am really, really concerned. I hear what you're saying, and once again, I apologize if I seem a little grumpy, but I am deeply concerned. How is it you see Hispanic students, you see white students make progress, and African American students do not meet the target? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, when a teacher goes to their professional learning communities, you take assessments, you take data, you sit down and you look at that data and you see how to best support those students that are struggling. If that is the case, then what are we missing? I don't get it. What are we missing?
You're absolutely right. The purpose of the meeting is to ensure that we're looking at individual students and making sure that they're making the progress and not allowing them to fall through the cracks. So what I would say is that as we continue to implement the concept of professional learning communities, that we become stronger in that implementation, and that we continue training teachers to ensure that they don't miss any individual students, and that we make progress personal for each and every one of them. I'll put that back on us, and it's our responsibility as a team to do that, to ensure that we put that training in place and that we do a better job of helping teachers to help our students with regards to that data response.
I would add, Trustee Anderson, I think the other piece of this is the beginning of the year. So this is where students are right now. We're going to have a middle of the year assessment. We're going to be tracking the growth to see where they go from this point. This is just your baseline. And then you're tracking it to kind of see, okay, based on the data that we have now, how do we use this data to now intervene and move these numbers to a different place? But yeah, I don't think anybody is excited about the notion that these students are starting out in a lower place than any other student. So.
And I just want to add as well, Trustee Anderson, this is where I feel Excel is your friend in the PLC meeting. And this is where sorting and filtering and looking at your students in different ways. And so you can pull them up by different student groups when you filter, and starting to have that conversation as a group in your PLC where you're saying, this is what our data looks like when we filter it this way. So what are we going to do, and what's our next step? And sometimes even too, as a practitioner, I can tell you, I always tell the story that I was a experienced teacher and a brand new teacher came in and her data on distributed property looked amazing. And my data on distributed property looked awful. And it was very humbling, but then also being able to say, what did you do? Like, what are you doing that I need to learn from? And that's the beauty of when you have CLTs or PLCs, I've heard them called different things over the years. You can have those conversations so you can say, why does Gilbert's data, it's outperforming mine? Like, what can I learn from him? And how can we foster that culture of collaboration where we're able to get better together?
I still am deeply concerned. And so I don't know what it is we're doing, but it ain't working. It's not working. And it is heartbreaking. I mean, this is heartbreaking to see. So I don't know what we have to do, but this is not, when we talk about preparing students for college, career, and life, that includes simply being able to read. And I mean, wow. So what are we gonna do? I'm not only gonna fuss at them, but I'm gonna fuss at us. What are we gonna do? What we gonna do different? We have to do something different. We can't keep sitting up talking about college, career, and life, and African American students ain't able to read. Like, that's not my vision, and I hope it's not y'all's. So what are we gonna do? Thank you.
Trustee Lugo.
So thank you all for the presentation, and for Trustee Anderson for speaking what I think all of us feel. I know y'all feel. And I am wondering if, as we prepare for although you won't be here, Dr. Mays, I'm going to remember that. But as the rest of y'all remain, thinking about how how does the budget impact what we can do, what the district can do? And I'm thinking teacher retention, right? Like supports. One of the reasons I love small schools is because the fewer students you have, the more attention a teacher can give. And when you look at the research, often there is research out there that says a lower student to teacher ratio, especially for kiddos that are dealing with stresses that many of us can't even imagine, right, in low-income communities, that can be a game changer for them. And so kind of what I put to y'all is, and to us, because we ultimately the board approves the budget, how are we going to address some of these issues by being smarter about how and where we invest our limited dollars? And then I think the other piece to it is the ongoing question of, how do we truly support teachers in a way that speaks to what they want and need. And I think we know it. It's empowering them. It's showing them that we trust them, that we value them. It's paying them. So it's also thinking about where we place students, where we place teachers. So I don't necessarily think that we have a silver bullet solution, but I do pray that over the next however many years I'm on the board, and with the new board members joining us, that we can face the problems head on. These aren't new. I think that's the part that's the most heartbreaking, is that board after board, administration after administration, and this isn't to put blame on one person, right? This is, we keep failing our kids. So all that to say, thank you, Trustee Anderson, for raising the concerns and speaking from your passion and your experience. And my challenge to the board is we need to be smarter about our budget, and smarter in a lot of other ways, and courageous, because the changes that are needed might not make everyone happy.
Okay, so Trustee Anderson and Trustee Lugo, thank you both for bringing the concern, because we are highly concerned when we look at our African American and Hispanic students. One thing that I will point out is when we look at our data, when we looked at the end of the year data, we've bounced back to where we were pre-pandemic. So you keep hearing, well, we just want to go back to normal. Well, normal pre-pandemic, our kids were not being successful. And so we have to do something different in order to get different results. And budgetary, one, valuing our teachers and, getting them the cost of living wages is super important. But also as a district, we're making a big investment in the planning time for our teachers. At the elementary level, we're spending about $8 million. At the secondary, it's about $24 million. So when you think about it, it's about a $30 million investment to give extra planning time for our teachers, because you look at the numbers. None of us at this table, none of us in this room, we don't teach children. Like children, the outcomes are a result of the learning opportunities they have in the classroom. And so we have to make sure that we're giving our teachers the resources that they need, but also the time. And this is our first semester with them having the extra planning time to really invest in their PLCs. So we've got to give it a little bit of time so that as they're working through the procedures and how they're managing their time differently and these different expectations of, we are looking back at the data for all students, and we're also planning ahead, and collectively we're all in the room together, because there has to be not they're your kids or my kids, but that they're our kids. Like, until we really set the culture of they're all our kids, and if Heather's kids are not performing, then that's all of our responsibility, and that's those conversations that happen through that time with the planning. And so it is a big investment, budgetary investment as a district, but I would ask that we continue on course for this year, and I anticipate that we will start to see, growth as we get better at the process and really looking at the data, and that we're all talking about these results. One thing that we're doing different this time is at our district leadership meetings monthly, I'm talking about the data that we're presenting here at the board. Our leaders didn't even know what our scorecard looked like or what the district values were. And so every month I'm in front of them talking about, this is our data, this is what it looks like, and collectively, what are we all doing to support our principals? Because they're the ones, and our teachers, because instruction happens on the campus. And as Mr. Hicks said, either you're teaching or you're support, and all of us are support. So we all have to, join in there, and what can we do to support our schools? So we do recognize that we have a lot of work to do, and the data is alarming, and we have a lot of work to do, and but our kids deserve better.
Trustee Boswell.
Thank you for all of this, and thank you to Trustee Anderson and Lugo for your points and questions too. I think that's our framing, and that's where we need to be. Appreciate the revelation that not everyone knows our values. Right? We spend a lot of time in our scorecard. We spend a lot of time with it, and people who are spending most of their time on campuses don't necessarily know it. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, and would really love to challenge ourselves to think about communication, to think about a thoughtful way to really convey that piece by piece and bit by bit throughout the year to all the staff, because it's not just our campus leaders, it's not just our teachers, it's not just our front office workers, it's everyone in the district is part of our students' success. And so I would really love to challenge our board, our communications team, our administration to think about how we build that into our culture in a thoughtful, collaborative, inviting way. And in turn, when we do that and it's time to have a new strategic plan to rethink that, our community is prepared to be part of that in a much more effective way, our families, our staff. So thank you for that learning. Really want to talk about the, I have one data question. We've talked about the growth being, and you saw the parallel growth across groups and where you expect the growth to be. And I'd love to find out if there's a distinction, kind of what you mean by expect the growth to be, and if there's a distinction between where we expect the growth to be and where we need the growth to be, to really get our kids up and reading on the level we need them to be reading, that we owe them. So I would love a better understanding of that.
I'll
to
start and then I'll ask Heather to jump in. Jacob, if you don't mind pulling up slide 5, that has the diamond, the sinking the diamond, as Heather puts it. So the projected growth, the data that we're looking at for this year, looking at last year's beginning of the year. So we talked about the RIT score. When you take the assessment, you get a RIT score. And then based on your RIT score and your cohort group of students, you're set a growth target from beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. And so this data is looking at beginning of the year last year as second graders to beginning of the year this year as third graders. And so if you look at the data for our third grade students, the diamond is what is projected growth for our students in terms of the RIT score from when they were beginning of the year second grade to beginning of the year third grade. And so the data shows, I don't know if Jacob might have stepped away. So I will show it to you.
Yes.
This way. So you see the diamond is under the top of the bar chart. So we've met the projected growth targets for reading, and then we also did for third grade math. Oh, there we go. So you'll see the diamond is a projected growth. So for our, what's for me hopeful is looking at this year's fourth graders who were last year's third graders, that we started tracking their information. So when you look at the fourth graders, they're way above their projected growth target. And so in third grade, they're also meeting their growth targets, but we anticipate those same trends moving forward.
And I appreciate the focus on growth and looking at that. And my question is, are we measuring two different things?
Yes.
Is measuring growth also, is that an analog, a direct correlation with measuring reading achievement, or is that individual growth and we need to look at something else so they can meet their growth targets but still not be reading on grade level, still not be where we want them to be? And my understanding is that is the case. Is that correct?
Yes, we're looking at two different things. So the on grade level is the percent of students that are meeting on grade level or above based on their RIT score. And then the growth measure is individually what percent of students are meeting their individual growth targets.
So they can be meeting that and still not be where we really need them to be, and still not be moving as quickly as we might need them to be to get where they need to be.
Yeah, one of the messages we set last year is we want people to stop worrying about the overall passing rate, knowing the impact of COVID. If 100% of our kids were meeting their growth targets, eventually they will be on grade level. And so that's why it's important to look at the percent of students meeting their growth target, because then we know they're on the right track.
Good, I appreciate that. Thank you for the distinction.
Yeah, that progress measure or that monitoring piece is to get us to the point of meeting it. But the making progress personal and focusing on growth is what allowed all of our campuses to make the significant improvements that they did, was because it can be saddening if you just focus on the meets, just because students sometimes are so far from being at that grade level for a number of different reasons. You know, when we talk about the literacy mentors, is really about exposing students to reading, helping them build their own personal library at home, where in an instance they may not have had that. And so it's trying to take care of some of those pieces that we know don't necessarily exist across the system for every child. to give them the opportunity to come in at the beginning of the year at a better place. But right now, we still have a long way to go, but we're focused on growth.
Thank you very much. And I would love to echo the questions about the budget that Trustee Lugo asked, and I know that anecdotally from campuses, I'm hearing the loss of instructional coaches on some campuses has created challenge. The number of new teachers and the relative lack of the coaches that you're sending in, and that when new teachers need that extra support, existing teachers are taking time out of their classrooms to give that. And I would love to really think about the budget, mentoring, and the data, the studies that show where our dollars are best spent, and whether we are skimping in areas that could better support our teachers and therefore better retain our teachers, and whether it is a short-sighted investment to make those cuts when that really might better serve our students, and some money might be placed there. So I would really love some data to back that up, some evidence and some information about whether that would be a wise place to put our money, because I know anecdotally we're hearing from campuses lower behavioral supports from central office and fewer resources are
It is a wise investment.
rippling.
It is a wise investment. It is a wise investment to have coaches and a behavioral support, and we know that. Brandon, each back to smiling because we've already had the conversation about going back and making sure that we have those coaches available for campuses and for teachers to try to make sure that, again, when we talk about the teaching practice, everybody knows that teaching reading is not an easy feat. And so there is a lot of support that's needed there. And so, but we have partners like Literacy First. I know you're a fan of Literacy First, that they train those tutors that come in to already have those skills. So expanding on an investment with Literacy First, looking at opportunities to bring back in coaches to support teachers, those are all components and investments that will be valuable.
Okay, and mentoring, I know some teachers have asked for leadership opportunities that don't take them out of the classroom, and the mentorship. I think I've spoken of a cousin I know who's in 8th grade. One of my cousins is an 8th grade math teacher, and she chose to drive an hour away from her house past a middle school to another district because of the strength of their mentoring. And now that she's several years in, she went back and taught in the school that's right across from her neighborhood because she got that mentorship and that growth. And she, as a new teacher, knew that that was important. And we need to be that district that people are driving to come get that falling in love with and staying in. And so that meant, all of those, I appreciate the focus and the discussion happening now so that we can support you when it's time to budget. So thank you for that. And you mentioned the teaching reading. What do we know? You brought us some data last spring or summer about the reading academies and the differences you saw in cohorts of schools that were the first to go through and schools that are going through this year. What do we know about that?
So we were trying to parse that out. Again, I will be honest, that was a maze to figure out. And so what we know now is that the campuses that were in the cohorts last year for reading academies, they've had the training. Cunningham was one of them. We all went through. This year it is the second group, and what we had traditionally called, I'm going to get the numbers mixed up, cohort 3 and cohort 4. Was that the right way or the other way around? 2 and 1 in your cohorts. 2 and 1. And so right now we have another about 1,000 teachers in the cohorts, in the Reading Academy cohorts, and they're getting the training. And we saw a positive correlation last year. Remember, this test was taken August 28th through September 4th, and they didn't start Reading Academies until later in the first quarter. So they hadn't had any of that training yet. So it sort of felt like as we were trying to pull the puzzle together, the teachers that didn't have the Reading Academies hadn't even started yet. And so it'll be interesting to see mid-year as we start to have the data back. Is the Reading Academy really influencing any practice or even just mindset about science of reading and how you're implementing that in the classroom?
Okay. And do you feel like the teachers are getting the support they need, that it's a different ride this year from the state and with the support from the district? What are you hearing?
Much quieter.
Okay. It's quieter to us, but I want to be sure that's reflecting better.
Much quieter in academics.
Okay.
Bless you.
Yes. And the state took care of some of the time parts, so I hope that is doing what it was intended to do. And if any teachers are hearing, let us know. Thank you. And then want to really share gratitude about that numeracy pathway. I know we talk a lot about early literacy. We've talked in board meetings before about the idea of maybe an early numeracy effort citywide, community-wide, in this similar way to the Greater Austin Reading Coalition and other things, and that we could do with partners. So I really appreciate that focus internally, and I would love to together really look into that community-wide as well to see if there's room for that and interest in that and other people. I read something recently about Child-Friendly Cities, and Philadelphia is doing a Learning Everywhere project where bus stops are having learning opportunities, and parks and sidewalks, and there's learning everywhere in the community for children where families naturally are. So I think there are exciting possibilities, and I would love to see us be a leader in that. So, but I really appreciate the internal work to start that. And then I have one final question, which if you go back and look at other times recently that we've focused on this scorecard item or on our HB3 goals, the third grade reading most specifically, you can look at our meeting on January 13th, our meeting on March 10th, our meeting on August 18th, and the strategies at the January and March meetings that you have shared with us look very different from the strategies from that August meeting and today's meeting, and wondering if that reflects the extra planning time, reflects things that weren't working, reflects new research that you found, kind of where are the changes coming from, and why have you chosen to change what you've chosen to change?
So last year, we were constantly looking at what was working and what wasn't working. And as we're thinking about how we provide better services to the campuses, we've been refining and tweaking and changing. Dr. Diaz coming in over the summer came in with a very different lens. And so she's been pushing the work. And so she's been trying to customize the narrative response to be aligned with what we're doing.
And are you hearing from campuses that seems to be working for them? Are you looking at data? Are you getting on the ground kind of subjective feedback? How are you evaluating how well those things are working?
Right now, Trustee Boswell, it is anecdotal because of the time of the year we're in, but I would like to add that our reorganization into learning communities is going to be impactful as well, we feel, because we have a support system for each learning community and we differentiate that support within each learning community based on the data as well. So that we're waiting to see the impact of that over the course of this school year with our different assessments that we're doing.
And we also met with Gibson. They're doing our curriculum audit, and so we had our initial conversation this week. It's a blur. We met with them this week to talk through, where are we, what are we doing, what are some things that we want them to focus on. The next conversation will be identifying what are the data pieces, because we do want to know who's accessing our data, and if they are or are not, why, and what do they need. So that'll give us a lot of really good information. So we'll be partnering with them. We meet again at the end of when we come back from Thanksgiving, and then we'll start the data collection in December, and then we'll launch into interviews and having focus groups and surveys in the spring.
Thank you all.
Trustee Ashe.
I just have two quick questions. My understanding is that the beginning of the year was done in September. Is that about right? When is middle of year done? When does that take place? Is it in December or is it in January?
So that window is actually opening the Monday after Thanksgiving break, the 28th, I believe it is, and it goes through December 9th. It's a 2-week window.
So we're almost upon those numbers by which to compare the beginning of the year with the middle of the year. What are you seeing, if anything, in the short cycle assessments that are being done to give you a window into what we may be seeing at middle of year?
So, are you gonna? Okay, so I'll start and then Mr. Hicks can jump in. So the difference between the short cycle assessment is that they're specific to the standards learned for that 9 weeks. One big change that we made this year is to align the assessments to the STAR redesign. So instead of it being all multiple choice questions, it's open-ended, short constructed responses. So we did see, we looked at the data multiple ways. We compared how they did on STAR compared to how they did on the short cycle assessment, and we did see a big drop from STAR to the short cycle assessment for elementary and middle school, but they were pretty aligned for high school. So I think kids are adapting to, wait a minute, I don't have to just any, mini, miny, mo. I really have to construct a response. So we've done a training with our principals so that they can help in the professional learning communities to understand how are we creating rubrics for short cycle assessments, because the short constructed responses, which are the open-ended, because kids have to show their thinking. It's no longer just any, mini, miny, mo. It's I have to show what I'm thinking to get credit for it. And that is a different way of assessing, and it has to change then our teaching to backwards design. So our short cycle assessment's kind of like, I don't know yet. So we'll see how the middle of the year, and I'll turn it over.
Also, I just want to be sure that you all and the public know that this is the first year that all students will be taking the assessments online. There was previously an option to take it online or to take paper and pencil, and many of us are used to paper and pencil, and so those students that are transitioning to all online but had previously taken it paper and pencil, there is some consternation in between that transition, and so they're getting used to it. So this beginning of the year short cycle assessment was a baseline, essentially, and so we are working on making sure that how you take the test is not going to impact what you know on the test and that you're able to show it. So we have to make sure that students are able to look at a screen, read passages, manipulate the mouse, move things around, and still utilize their strategies at the same time in order to ensure that they are comprehending well and showing their comprehension. The second thing is that the STAR redesign that was mentioned earlier is impactful as well. There are very different types of questions, not multiple choice, but they are being asked to answer part one, and then based on your answer on part one, answer part two. And if you didn't answer part one correctly, you can't get part two correct. And we have to really, really make sure that those are not things that are getting in the way of students being able to show their learning.
That is interesting to learn about the redesign. I would love to know more about that, just generally speaking, as a citizen. My second question is a little bit more broad, and I hope that there's some type of response, but there may not be. Because I have heard us talk several times about the challenges of COVID, which are very real. And I appreciated the context of the data. And I would love to know what we're doing as a result of knowing that that is the context. Meaning, are we expecting growth at a greater rate? Is that the expectation that we've given to our teachers? What types of interventions, for lack of a better word, are we actively pursuing? Have we learned things from other districts that might be seeing success? I think I always hear, keep this in mind, and then yet the next question that always follows behind that to me is, and what are we doing about that? Because if we know that that's a barrier, what are we changing and what are we doing differently as a result of that?
Thank you. I think that's a great question and something that we've been exploring. I've been certainly calling around the state too. What are you seeing? Does your data look like this? I'll call Midland, I'll call Isleta, I'll call Houston. Are you seeing the same thing? Are we all seeing the same thing? The trend that keeps coming up is the targets don't change for this group of students. The target is staying the same. It's a norm reference. So even NWEA MAP isn't saying, oh, but this group of third graders, they had all these experiences, so let's take it down so that we can account for that. That target is staying the same. We're certainly exploring some of the successes that we're hearing from some other districts. I don't want to get into the specifics of all the programs, and there are a few that seem promising, where there's been implementation district-wide or even just in targeted areas. And pilots of things where people are actually seeing a lot of growth initially. You also don't want to just jump into something and spend money on a product, spend money on training and time to then say a year from now, well, actually, it was just a short-term solution, and we want to make sure there's long-term gains. However, we don't have time to waste. right? We need the solution yesterday. So we're just in that position right now where there are some early adopters out there, and we don't want to just buy anything or think about anything. So we're also really encouraging to make that progress personal and to say, I know, and when we looked at this, I was thinking about the students at Cunningham and thinking, okay, I know that group, I know that, and I can name their names and I can see their faces, and thinking about what was that experience like and how much growth did we see last year? Like, did we actually see a lot of growth when you came back in January? Because this might just be an educational opportunity in the classroom with the teacher where the teacher is the program. And some kids haven't had that. So I think it's all, and I don't want to get into the specifics of the programs and the products that we're looking at, just because we have to make some decisions and see some long-term solutions.
And end of the day, a product is only as good as the user, right? And so the process that Mr. Hicks talked about with the PLCs it's so important that we're looking at what do kids need to know, how do they show you, and what do you do when they don't, and what is our response to that? I think that the accountability coming into looking at that is how do we support teachers to know how do they differentiate, and then when the differentiation isn't working, what do they do? I think that's the key, right, to helping our teachers and knowing how to respond when students need something different.
Trustee Ashley, there is a real impact to teachers just coming into this and trying to meet the needs of our students. Again, the same way that the students have to grow, the teachers have to grow in practice. So the investment in the mentors, the investment in the coaching, the investment in the training, it's going to take a while given the vacancies that we just recently had to fill, and I know from visiting classrooms that we have a ways to go in terms of providing the support and getting everybody where they need to be.
So with that framework in mind, Dr. Mays, because I think that's always that's a thing that I think is difficult when it's your kid who's struggling and it's not as, it's having a hard time reading or having difficulty for whatever the reason may be. And I know our board wants to see results as quickly as possible. And yet I also know that some of these changes take time. So what is a realistic expectation of a time frame? And I that's an almost impossible question. So I understand that I realize the difficulty of the question I'm asking, and yet is it realistic to think that we can account for or right the ship, if you will, for all of our students by the end of this year? Like, is that, like, what are we looking at through these changes? And I know we will never ever get it where it's an impossible. It's never perfect. I think perfection sometimes can be the enemy of really great work, and I think sometimes we want it so badly because we know that that's what these kids need. And I also want to be realistic about what this type of a shift means and when we really should be expecting results.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things is that we are very mindful of balancing support versus pressure, because our schools are stressed to the max with the number of vacancies and people having to cover each other. So what we don't want is to have a heavy hand and say, what are we doing about Heather? She has low performing, instead of that, then it's through the PLC process of, okay, Heather, Gilbert is doing better. How can we help support you learn different skills so that your students can also be successful? So it's that balance of, we recognize that students are depending on us to get it right, but then we also recognize that our teachers need the support because they're also dealing with mental health and they're coming through the whole COVID thing, and they're also dealing with the number of vacancies and covering for each other. And so just being really mindful of pushing with support is kind of where we have to find that fine balance, and really making sure that our principals are leading the PLCs and that we're not saying, oh, Heather's tired, we're not going to make her participate in PLCs, but her data is really bad. Well, no, like we have to take advantage of the opportunities and the resources to keep moving the work and keep having those conversations. When our kids aren't performing, then we can't just say, oh, well, it's a new teacher, they don't know what to do. No, we have to say, okay, how do we help you? How do we get in there and give you the skills that you need so that the kids can be successful?
And I'd just like to add that there's no substitute for a great teacher in the classroom. In the end, that's what's going to make all the difference in the world. And we can all think of teachers that helped us be the people that we are today. And so that's what we want to make sure is that every student has a great teacher in front of them every single day. With that in mind, it's important that teachers also begin to feel competent about what they're doing. And so that's our responsibility to ensure that we help build our teachers up and build capacity in teachers every single day so that they can become more confident in the teaching that they're doing. The more confident that those teachers become, then the better that our students are going to do over the course of time. I truly believe that.
Trustee Ashley, I would also say, again, the middle of the year, you'll be able to see like how things are moving. If you look at Table 2, again, you can see where students made progress in terms of growth, which, again, I think that, and then I was just talking to Trustee Singh about it, about 60% of our Hispanic students meeting their growth target from one year to the next, or even African Americans, again, it's about 55-60 for non-ECODIS, 50% for ECODIS. So looking at those same numbers when we get the middle of the year data to see how are they progressing and how are they growing. So that's not the end of the year, but you should see something at the middle of the year. So based on some of the inputs that they're talking about in terms of PLCs, looking at data, having conversations, and making progress personal.
Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
When y'all said all that, a question just popped in my head, so I apologize. When you are doing your observations or when you in your professional learning communities, are there any discussions about I don't want to say having difficulty with a student, but not being able to relate to a student for whatever reason? Is there that type of discussion?
Trustee Anderson, it's not necessarily a standing agenda item, but teachers do talk about what their barriers or impediments are to being able to move the work. And so anecdotally, they may have that conversation, but it's not a standard question that's talked about in there. But definitely if it's a barrier and impediment that a teacher is having, they can bring that up.
So I'm going to go back to that 15%. Those are clearly conversations that we should have been having. And to me, it's not optional. It's not optional. If I'm a student in your class and for whatever reason we are just not connecting, then I'm not able to do my work. I'm not able to, fully participate in my education. So I think it's a missed opportunity if those discussions are not being had regularly. It is what it is. We see what it is, so we need to start having those conversations if they're not happening regularly.
What I'd like to add to Trustee Anderson on that is that when the administrators and the instructional leaders on campus do their walkthroughs in the classrooms and they notice those situations, or or teachers come to an administrator or an instructional leader, their team leader or whatever, with those concerns, they do have those conversations. It may not just be in that particular environment that we're talking about here, but they do have the conversations. And as a principal, I had them all the time.
Mr. Hicks, y'all know me. Y'all know me. Y'all know me. There is a conversation that you and I can have that someone that looks like us cannot have with someone that looks like us, if you catch what I'm saying. I'm going to put it out there. So if we are not having those regular conversations with each other in professional learning communities regularly, and then we're looking at data related to African American students, and then we sit in the meeting And when we are talking about this data, because I keep noticing this pattern, when we're talking about African American students and, you know, maybe they've had a decrease or whatever the case is, we'll say African American students and then we'll start talking very general. Like, we see the data. Like, I'm really interested in knowing what's going on, because something that we're doing is not working. And I know y'all saying stay the course, but staying the course could mean third grade students moving on to fourth grade and they still struggling. And I may not be on the board then, but I will be a community member up here ranting and raving even more so. But I truly would like to know what we are going to do. This is disturbing, and I'm not saying that hard conversations are not needed, because they are. But something is going on that maybe is something that we implemented. Something has happened that is not working for African American students, and I really hope y'all can get to the bottom of it, because y'all will see me at the board meetings when I'm no longer here. Thank you.
Thank you. There are a couple things that I heard tonight that I really appreciated. Pretty much everything that Trustee Anderson said. Especially, and I really liked what you just said, like, what is that other factor? Because when I've been talking to teachers about the PLCs, I think they like the collaborative planning. You know, they like the opportunity to just sit and reflect and be with their peers, for the most part. So I would guess that this is actually improving their teaching performance. If it's not, then boy, you know, that would be really sad. But I think we're going to get to the point where, because I think about me as a first year teacher, I would have really liked having this dedicated time to do that. But then we think about, okay, then what is the other thing that's messed up here? Like, if the teaching is going okay, what are the other organizational factors? And I mean, I'm always going to go back to staffing, right? And I know this is no surprise to you, but like, when I look at the campus by campus data, and I see we have one school where 80% of the economically disadvantaged Black students have made growth targets in math, but then there's another campus where only 20% of the economically disadvantaged African American students have met their growth target in math. I want to know why. So I have asked this at every single board meeting. Explain to me the outliers. And I still haven't gotten that response. but I know we have some idea. And this points to me, it's not, because I know you guys are doing everything you can, but this does underscore for me that we need a DRE. We need DRE back, because they are the people who can actually go in there, the Department of Research and Evaluation. We can't expect our academics team to lead academics and do the research related to it. That's just too much, right? So I'm really missing that other department that can go in there and answer these questions that I know you have too, but just don't have the capacity right now to follow up on. But I think that will help us work smarter. It will help us come up with a budget that says, this is the thing that Blanton is doing, where they're getting 80% of their economically disadvantaged students who are African American meeting their growth target. Like, I don't know, maybe they actually have, maybe they're fully staffed. It could be as simple as that. You know, Mr. Hicks said, you know, we need an amazing teacher in every classroom. That could just be it. And there's no amount of PLC that's going to make an uncertified teacher as good as a certified teacher who's experienced and all of that kind of stuff. So what I'm saying, it's like, let's, I really am so curious to know what is the difference between these campuses that are not achieving and the ones that are not. And this is no criticism of the campuses. I think it's probably systemic issues. I think it's probably stuff other than the teaching. It's the staffing, it's the mental health, it's the family engagement. And like, those are sections that I don't see in our board monitoring reports that I would love us to get to the point where we do have these standard sections so that we can start seeing, maybe it's, the PLC is great. This is revolutionary in terms of making us have high standards wherever you are in the district. I think that is the goal of the PLCs, part. But it's all the other, we got to kind of have, what is going to be the thing that's going to revolutionize staffing? I think we have a huge opportunity with this year's budget in saying, okay, maybe we need to, reduce, maybe it's as simple as reducing class size in our Title I schools. That could make a world of difference. Maybe it's having a summer program, to stem the learning loss. When you look at there was a really nice graph you had that showed the difference between the end of year last year and the beginning of year this year, and there's a huge drop for some of these kids. We could actually, if we had a DRE department, pinpoint where those kids are and stick a summer program in those campuses, and that would probably address it. There's a lot of research, as you all know, behind that. So I know we're doing what we can with what we've got, but I think a little bit more looking at these other key systemic issues. So I just want to end with saying, appreciate the PLC. I think that anecdotally, from what I'm hearing, it is making a difference. But there's a whole bunch of other factors that are possibly falling through the cracks. And one that continues to cause me some concern is, I like the PLCs, but I don't like it when it's in a school where they don't have the staff. When I go to a campus and I see an instructional coach and a teacher aide picking up volleyballs and being PE subs, that's not helping students either. So systemically, what are we doing to address these beyond the PLCs is what I'm interested in. Thank you. Here. Okay. I think, hold on a sec. Oh, wrong page. Here we go. Sorry. Trustees. Thank you, trustees, and thank you, Dr. Mays. As part of our commitment to monitoring, the last question is to ask trustees if they accept the report presented as it aligns with our goals and constraints, and if not, to ask if this is still the right strategy for the district. Trustees, please raise your right hand if you are ready to accept tonight's report. Thank you. President Rodriguez, you came 30 seconds late because I messed up, and if you were here, you wouldn't have messed up. Thank you all. Thank you. All right, thank you, trustees, for taking part in a shared commitment to students and student outcomes. Dr. Mays, do you have any additional comments on this? Okay. So for tonight, we'll move to our next item, which is information, reports, and updates. So Dr. Mays, would you please introduce the next item, the review of the district financial audit?
Yes, ma'am. So now we get to hear about the money, the pieces that you all were just kind of mentioning in terms of tying it to our resources and our areas of focus. So Mr. Ramos will tell you, I'll share with you all some of the results.
All right. Dr. Mays, President Rodriguez, before you, we will have a report to review the district's financial audit. As part of our fiscal year process, every year per Texas school law, we have to really look at contracting with an external auditing firm to look at our financial statements and review those financial statements to ensure the accuracy of what we are reporting as a school district. Before I introduce our external auditing firm, Whitley Penn, I would like to recognize members of my staff who really were a key effort in making sure that the auditors received the information and the documents that they needed to complete their work. So we have Katrina Montgomery, our Assistant Superintendent of Financial Services, here with us. We have Scott Moore in the back, our Executive Director of Finance. Brenda Niles, our Assistant Director of Accounting. Maggie Bond is back there as well, and she's our Assistant Director of Medicaid and Risk Management. And then we have Adriana Cedillo, our Executive Director of Budget, with us as well. And so that being said, I would like to introduce Lupe Garcia with Whitley Penn, our external auditing firm.
President Rodriguez, trustees, Dr. Mays, good evening. I'm here tonight to present to you the results of the fiscal year 2022 financial statement audit and federal single audit. The presentation that I'll take you through tonight will go over the audit process, the results of the audit, go through some financial statement highlights, and I'll end with required communications. Next slide. In addition to myself, other members of the engagement team included Eileen Comple-Macalental. She was a senior manager on the engagement, working with senior staff here at the district, as well as leading our team here in the field. Brooke Fuller was the manager on the engagement. Not listed on this slide are the senior associates and associates that also played a big part in completing the audit. And Tom Peterson was the concurring partner. His level of review was the second partner review, reviewing the annual comprehensive financial report, the federal single audit report, and key work papers in our file. The audit process itself takes several months to complete. We started our work in the spring with interim procedures where we focus on testing the district's internal controls or your policies and procedures that you have in place to record transactions in your general ledger accurately. We also identify the major programs that are tested in the federal single audit and perform the majority of the compliance testing at that point as well. Once the district's fiscal year is over, we return for year-end field work, and our procedures are more financial in nature. We're performing a variety of analytical procedures. We're confirming information directly with third parties, and we're corroborating balances in your general ledger with source documentation. All the procedures we perform over all these months is to obtain enough audit evidence to support the opinion that we express on the financial statements. On the next slide, we have the areas that we focus on heavily during the audit. Because salaries and benefits play such a big part of your budget, we spend a lot of time in human resources and payroll. Payments to vendors and how those services and goods are procured is also tested in procurement and accounts payable. We look into information technology to the extent that it impacts the district's ability to prepare accurate and timely financial statements. We test your significant revenue sources, state aid, your property taxes, your grant revenues, attendance, because it plays such a big part on how state funding is determined, and then the district's financial close and reporting process. As external auditors, we can issue a few different types of opinion on the financial statements. A disclaimer is an opinion that's expressed, go ahead and tap it, when the records either don't exist or they're in such poor condition we can't complete the audit. A qualification would be a situation where everything was fairly stated except for the areas that we list on our report. And then on the far right, the unmodified opinion, that is the best outcome in a financial statement audit. That opinion is expressed when the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects and they've been prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So on the next slide, I'm happy to report that our opinion on the district's financial statements is unmodified. That's the first report that's in the financial section of the report that indicates that our unmodified opinion can be relied upon to the external users once this report is made public, that the financial statements are fairly stated, the notes are fairly stated, complete and clear, and everything is being presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We also issue a second report on the district's internal controls over financial reporting. If any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies had come to our attention, they would have been reported here, but we did not note any, nor did we identify any non-compliance that was material to the financial statements. And then the third report we issue is on the district's administration of the federal programs. We identified 3 major programs in the single audit that included the elementary and secondary school emergency relief, or the ESSER funding that the district expended during the fiscal year, the emergency connectivity fund, and then the special education cluster. Our testing of these 3 major programs did not identify any question cost or any non-compliance or any internal control deficiencies. In the procurement area, there was something that we noted related to how federal purchasing was procured. The cost price analysis wasn't found in one instance, so we noted that and brought that to management's attention, and they've already implemented a corrective action plan. Jumping into the financial statements themselves, the statement of net position is the district's balance sheet on an accrual basis of accounting. So this is all the activity of the school district. Your assets and deferred outflows of resources as at the end of the year were just under $3.1 billion. Of that amount, cash and investments represents $928 million. And then your capital assets, the land, buildings, school, campuses, vehicles, furniture, and equipment netted depreciation and amortization were $1.8 billion. Your liabilities and your deferred inflows were $2.8 billion. Bonds and your unamortized premiums represented just under $1.8 billion of that balance. And then you report two liabilities related to your employee benefits through the Teacher Retirement System of Texas. These liabilities represent Austin ISD's proportionate share of the overall plan liability of all the employers that participate in these two plans. The first liability is the net pension liability, that's $119 million, and then the net other post-employment benefit liabilities related to retiree health care, and that's $261.3 million. These two liabilities are considered estimates. TRS has auditors and actuaries that remeasure these amounts each and every year. Although these are large amounts, the district will never have to write a check for these amounts. This is purely financial reporting only. The district is budgeting and contributing to these plans exactly like it's supposed to each and every year. The difference between your assets and your outflows and your liabilities and your inflows is your net position or the net worth of the district as of the end of the fiscal year. And that was $241.6 million as of June 30th, 2022. The general fund is the district's main operating account. For fiscal year 2022, the district reported $1.5 billion in revenue in the general fund. 92% of that comes from property taxes at $1.4 billion. The other 8% comes from various state and federal sources and your local funding, which is primarily interest income. General fund expenditures represented $1.5 billion for fiscal year 2022. 50% of that amount is recapture, and the very next slide is more on recapture. 30% of the general fund expenditures were instruction and related services, facilities, maintenance and operations, and instructional school leadership. Each represented 5% of your general fund expenditures, and each remaining category of expenditures were 2% or less. So looking at recapture, for fiscal year 2022, that was $762.8 million. So you retained $662.5 million out of the total $1.4 billion that was collected. So you can see that that portion that goes back to the state has increased each of the last 2 years as well. For the general fund budget to actual, your revenues were greater than your final budgeted amounts by $13.9 million. Overall, your expenditures were less than what you had budgeted by $42.5 million. You did have an increase in your general fund balance of $31.7 million for an ending balance of $267.7 million. Of that amount, $192.1 million is unassigned fund balance. You have assigned fund balance of $75.2, and then $0.4 million in non-spendable fund balance. So if we look at your unassigned fund balance as a percentage of your expenditures for fiscal year 2022, that was your unassigned fund balance represented 23% of your expenditures. In CE local, you do have a policy that your unassigned fund balance should be equal to or not less than 20% of that. So the district has been meeting that board policy goal for each of the last 5 fiscal years. 2 more budget to actual schedules included in the report. Your breakfast and lunch program had revenues that were greater than budgeted by $1.9 million. Your expenditures in your breakfast and lunch program were less than budgeted expenditures by $1.4. Overall, there was an increase in fund balance in this fund of $6.9 million for an ending balance of $7 million. The debt service fund, which is the fund the district accounts for the interest and sinking portion of the property taxes and where you record your principal and interest payments made on your long-term debt, reported revenues of $170.5 million, which was more than your budgeted amounts by $500,000. Your expenditures in this fund were less than budgeted expenditures by $4.4 million. Overall, you experienced an increase in your debt service fund for an ending balance of $168 million. As part of the audit, we do review the district's accounting policies. The district is following all current pronouncements. During the fiscal year, the district implemented a new pronouncement related to how leases are accounted for and reported in the financial statements. The financial statements do include estimates. Not every amount that the district records in the general ledger is represented by an invoice or a statement. So some of the more significant estimates in the financial statements, anything related to state funding, state aid, is based on a variety of factors. How revenue and your accruals are calculated. Your allowances for uncollectible receivables is based on historical collections. And then anything related to the pension and other post-employment benefit liabilities that I mentioned earlier is the largest estimate in the financial statements, and so management has made these estimates and recorded them properly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. On the next slide, I'm happy to report that the performance and completion of our audit did not encounter any difficulties from the district. We had management's 100% cooperation. Anyone we needed to meet with was made available. Any information we requested was provided. Any questions we asked were answered in a timely manner. So I do want to thank the district for its cooperation and its preparedness in order for us to complete the audit on time and have this report filed on time with all the stakeholders that are waiting for this report. Our procedures did not identify any material misstatements that we had to bring to management's attention, no disagreements with management on any matters. At the end of the audit, we do request a management representation letter. In that letter, management represents to us that it's given us everything we've requested. Nothing's been withheld that would materially misstate the financial statements or note disclosures. Next slide. As far as we're aware, the district is consulting with other accountants. They do enlist the services of another firm for various accounting and financial reporting services. And then the last bullet on this slide, during the year, we may provide information, answer questions, provide guidance. We want to serve as a resource to the district, but at no time do we feel the way we answer or the guidance we provide is a condition as to our retention as the district's external auditors. So that completes my presentation. If you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take those questions at this time.
Thank you, Lupe. Trustees, any questions? No questions. Okay.
Appreciation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for taking such good care of our documentation, our finances, and for the clarity. It's nice to have a presentation where we don't have to have a lot of questions, so greatly appreciated.
Thank you all very much for all your work around the stewardship of the district and for your audit as well. Trustees, we're going to pause the meeting for about 5 or 10 minutes just to give everybody a break, because I know we've had 5 trustees up here and there has not been a chance to take a little bit of a break. So while we transition to the next presentation around the NXP 313 agreement, we'll pause for a few minutes so folks can take a break on the board. Good evening. We are back after a short, brief recess. Before we move to our next item, I want to go back to item 3, our president's report. First of all, I apologize for not being here at the start of the meeting as I had a previous commitment. And I want to just share 2 items for the president's report. First, I want to congratulate Austin ISD and most importantly, our students and our community, our voters, for the amazing win on the bond election. Austin ISD passed a historic $2.44 billion investment in students Tuesday night. Austin ISD saw all 3 bond propositions pass with widespread support. Our major proposition passed with 72.5% of the vote, just surpassing our previous historic win of 72.07% of the vote in 2017. Not that we're trying to be competitive. Dr. Mays has already shared that our safety and security work funded by this bond will start this summer, including the design of secure vestibules, fencing, and exterior safety for all of our campuses. And this historic investment in Title I schools is something that will pay dividends in the district for years and years to come. And on behalf of the board, we wish to thank the community again for your support of this work. And finally, I want to thank Dr. Mays for serving as our interim superintendent. Congratulations on successfully navigating our $2.44 billion bond effort, our community as well, passing a balanced budget and focusing on academic achievement as we navigate out of the pandemic. We appreciate your commitment to our mission, our students, our teachers, and our staff. And the Austin ISD Board of Trustees will meet November 15th and invite the trustees-elect to discuss a transition plan. And Dr. Mays will be with us through the end of this year, and we wish you, Dr. Mays, Belinda, and your entire family all the best as you begin your new role. So congratulations.
So I do want to say thank you to this board for giving me the opportunity to kind of help, serve in this capacity while we were kind of undergoing a change. Like I said, every day was fun, and I'm thankful and grateful to our team. I know we don't have a lot of people here right now, but we got a lot of people out there that you all made me look good. So I appreciate you and I thank you, and I know that you all will continue the hard work that it takes to serve our students in our community. And so, again, I appreciate you all and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mace. And actually, I'm going to call on you next to introduce our next item, 6.2.
Yeah, so we do have Dr. Reach coming on board as we look for every resource that we can to pour into some of the resources that we've talked about in previous presentations, or resources to try to support our teachers. We're looking at every possible opportunity that we can, and so this NXP Chapter 313 is a part of those potential resources, and so I'll turn it over to Dr. Reach to tell us where we are with that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mays, Board of Trustees. Thanks you for having us here this evening. I'm joined by two of our partners, Chris Gramer with Colwell Consulting and David Thompson with Thompson & Horton, who's helping us with as our legal counsel as we work through this project. So we do want to provide you an update on our progress and next steps and some of the community outreach that we've done since we last met on this. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gramer, where he's going to give a brief overview and go through a couple of our slides, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Again, Chris Gramer with Colwell Consulting. Good to see you all tonight. Before we get into, I think, some of the items that Dr. Reach just spoke of, back up just a minute and talk about the 313 program and just remind us of what we're talking about. So Chapter 313 refers to a section of the tax code that is an economic development tool for school districts to engage qualified projects, to offer a value limitation for a 10-year period in exchange for tax savings for a company, able to negotiate payments in lieu of taxes, and secure revenue protection for the school district. So as Dr. Mays alluded to, additional revenue for the school district that is available to the school district. Just a background about the program. It was enacted in 2001 by the 77th Texas Legislature. Since that time, it has been renewed several times. Several hundred projects have been approved for agreements within this past year alone. An additional several hundred applications were filed and are moving through the process, just like is the case here in Austin ISD. And so you see some of those figures there on that slide, so I won't read those off, but just again, just over 20 years that the program has been in existence. It was not renewed by the legislature this past session, so the end of this calendar year ends the ability under the current law to engage in these types of agreements. And whether the legislature takes up the item again this spring when they reconvene is up for question, but the current law is still in place at this point, and that's the law that we are moving forward under with these applications that we've received from NXP.
So briefly, I just want to remind everyone kind of our timeline, where we've been on this. Back in May 16th was when the board approved submitting an application for what was then Project Gateway, the partnership with NXP, for 2 potential sites, and we sent that into the comptroller. By August 15th, we got some information back that they've reviewed that application and started on their next steps. From that point, we did some community outreach, and I have a slide in just a few minutes that kind of summarizes that, but we met with our district advisory council, and we had 2 community conversations. And then just the timelines of what would happen if the board were to approve these. The first project would start January 1st of 2025, and that's Site 2, and I have a map on a further slide. And then the other project would start January 1st, 2027, and that would be Site 1, and both of those would be for 10-year periods. So as I mentioned, we did do a series of community feedback. On August 20th, I met with the District Advisory Council. We went through a presentation very similar to this one, a lot of the same slides. Obviously, the timeline was a little different. On October 12th and October 18th, we worked with a partner consultant and held 2 community conversations, one virtual, one online. And with meeting with DAC, in general, the feedback that we heard was some questions over how strong or how much are we wanting to support tax breaks for businesses, but also a lot of interest in the idea that this could bring in a lot of money for the school district, and some general feelings that that's worth the discussion. It's worth talking about that if we're talking about that amount of money and how that could possibly be used for the district. During our community conversations, we did have a strong turnout from our partners with Central Texas Interfaith, and they did share, as you heard during our public comment, some pretty strong opposition to the general 313 program overall, and of course Austin ISD entering into a 313 agreement. And the general request was, since the program is ending and it stops, we just need to let it end. And the request from them was to not enter into a 313 agreement. The other thing that we asked and then the other thing that we did is we created a website where we have most of this information in an FAQ. We also created a Let's Talk item for it. We didn't receive any questions on Let's Talk, but that's available on the website. So the other thing that we asked when we did the community engagement is that first, what are the ideas around this? What's the feedback on that, which I kind of shared. But then we also asked that if the district were to go ahead and approve it, what kind of interest would there be in how we dedicate funds? And we actually kind of did semi-presentations on 3 different topics. We talked about how funds that came in could be used as a benefit for staff, whether that be salary or other benefits aligned to that. We talked about how money could be used for alignment for programming, especially around CTE programming, recognizing that this partner that we're looking at, NXP Semiconductor, does have a close alignment with fabrication and some of our other CTE programming, and how we could actually build out that programming at our own high school, kind of looking at building a pipeline into jobs that could be available with NXP. And then finally, we talked about affordable housing and how money like this that was outside of the recapture system could be dedicated to a purpose like setting up affordable housing programs in Austin ISD. Overall, we did hear strong interest in all of these. I don't think anyone said, no, you should not do one of these things. There were questions around when we're looking at employee benefits, what's the sustainability? Because we are talking about a 10-year time period. So obviously, if we were looking at a large raise, that may not be sustainable through the whole period of the 10 years. Certainly would not be sustainable after that. So that was discussed, and we talked about other benefits other than just raises that could still be used for staff. With the affordable housing, we heard a lot of great ideas around how we can partner with a lot of groups, especially City of Austin, who also just had a bond pass on Tuesday, which we're very excited about. But how we can work with some of our partners to expand our access. We talked a little bit about how we have the land, we have the will, we just don't necessarily always have the funding to build some of this out. So a lot of interest in still kind of understanding that. We're not here with here's what we should do if we get that money right now, because it's not a decision that would need to be made today. It's something that if this goes forward and when those sites start breaking ground, we'd really want to come back to the board and say, how do we dedicate that money? What's our plan for utilizing that money, and seeing if we want to take action at that point for really dedicating something to a purpose or potentially multiple purposes. And then also allow for more feedback, recognizing that in 2 years, there could be some changes on how we want to prioritize funding.
So again, the Chapter 313 program is a 10-year value limitation, so different from words you may hear like abatement that are utilized by a county. Value limitation is that for M&O tax purposes, that the project would be assessed a valuation of $100 million in contrast to the full taxable value the project would receive from the county appraisal district. So again, the 313 program only affects the maintenance and operation valuation of the project, meaning your M&O tax rate is assessed on a $100 million valuation. The valuation of the project for INS tax purposes to service the bonds that just passed is not affected by this. So site one, the larger of the two, $1.8 billion with a B of peak taxable value potentially. The full value of that project is there to service the bonded indebtedness of the school district. So that INS rate and those tax collections are not affected by that site. That's also the case with site two. That's the case even with a 313 agreement. So all we're talking about is the valuation of the project that the school district's M&O tax rate would be applied to. And that $100 million valuation is set by the state comptroller office, not set by the applicant in this case, or the school district. And so comptroller's office sets that valuation. As a part of a 313 agreement, there are a couple of financial implications. So outside the fact that they're paying their full taxes for INS tax purposes, the 313 agreement dictates that there are revenue protection clauses that ensure that the school district is not financially harmed in any way. And so David will talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but Article 4 of any agreement states that school district, any revenue they would have received under a school finance system versus the revenue that they do receive, ensure that if at any point you are worse off having entered into this agreement, the applicant with a signed agreement in place pays the school district that amount of money, and that amount of money and any of those payments made under a 313 agreement are not subject to recapture. So those additional revenues are then not recognized by the state and, as you heard and are very well versed in, are then not sent back to the state in the form of recapture. The other financial impact, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, a little more at length, but is a supplemental payment, and this is a little more straightforward, and that's a negotiated sharing of the tax savings. So obviously, the NXP is going to save substantially in their taxes over this 10-year period of time. We were able to negotiate a percentage of that back to the school district under the agreements that would be 40% of any dollar that they save then is paid back to the school district over that 10-year period. Again, those payments to the school district are not subject to recapture. Funding is not reduced based on that revenue brought in. So we do like to say it's above and beyond what you would have in a normal year, all of those payments that come to AISD from the applicant. Dr. Reach kind of mentioned on this a little bit, but there are two things that are contingent for these payments to be made. One is a 313 being in place, but also that NXP builds the facilities. So, alluding to them needing to turn dirt and build, taxable value has to be in place for these benefits to be there for them and also for the benefits to be here for AISD. David, did you want to?
Well, good evening, board members and Dr. Mays. Good to see you all. And I want to add my congratulations to your successful bond campaign. I know that'll be a great benefit to your community and to your students and faculty. And as once upon a time a longtime resident in Austin, I'm very happy to see that support for the public schools here. As Mr. Kramer just said, and I want to emphasize one more time because I think a concern was expressed earlier in your comments, a 313 agreement applies to the M&O side of your revenue stream. That's the side where you are recaptured. It has no impact whatsoever on the INS side. Any value from improvements or expansions of facilities, the company would pay their share of taxes for INS to help support and retire bonds the same as any other taxpayer. And that's not affected by by whether there's a 313 agreement or not. Second, I did hear a concern about the impact of a Chapter 313 agreement on the golden pennies. And that's what Mr. Grammer was just alluding to. What is included in a proposed agreement is a revenue protection component, which, as Mr. Grammer said, simply holds you harmless. Make sure that you receive the full benefit of those golden pennies, and we've discussed that previously in public with the board. So you would not only receive the incentive payment, but you would also receive the full value of what your golden pennies would generate. So it truly has no impact either on the INS side, and it does not affect your state funding, including the golden pennies component of your tax rate. By way of update, I know there have been some questions. Mr. Reach and I have talked about, Dr. Reach and I have talked about the CHIP Act that at the federal level, and I wanted to give you a little updated information on that. Again, we've discussed it previously with the board when we first began these discussions. I think in May, the House had passed one version, the Senate had passed a different version. They were in what was called reconciliation, working out the differences. They did ultimately resolve that. The CHIP Act was signed by the President, I believe, on August 9th. And on August 25th, by executive order, the President did issue some implementation guidance. It is going to be implemented through the Department of Commerce. It is a competitive grant program. There is some certain amount of money that was dedicated in the act. And again, think of this. There are local incentives and state incentives. The purpose of the CHIP Act, again, is to homeshore or support the development within the United States of chip production. I think in the last year to 2 years, with supply chain issues and everything else, I think there's been a lot of recognition about the vulnerability in a lot of products in the United States if supply chains and dependence on overseas production is interrupted. And so that's really the focus of the CHIP Act. It's really at that national level to create incentives within the United States for investment as compared to other places in the world. We do expect the Department of Commerce to issue guidance for applications in early 2023. And again, it's a sum certain. I think the total amount is around $52 billion. It will be highly competitive. We're hearing conversations and discussions, and some of it's already in writing about what some of the criteria will be that they will use to prioritize proposals for consideration. And one important criteria that we want to make sure and bring to the board's attention that's going to be a high priority is whether a particular project and company have received both state and local support. And that's frankly going to be almost a requirement in order to qualify and get any kind of prioritization for the federal funding is that the project also receives incentives and support at both the state and local level. So that is an aspect of the CHIP Act that not just NXP, but all companies will be looking at very closely because obviously if that's a qualifier in order to be eligible and to be able to receive the funds through the CHIP Act, that will certainly be something we would presume that companies would take into consideration. We're not here to speak for the companies. We work for the district. Mr. President, we do have representatives here tonight from the company, from NXP, so if there are specific questions that need to be addressed to them at any point, it's not our place to try to answer on their behalf, but I'm sure they would be happy to provide any information that the board may need. But that's the update on the CHIP Act we wanted to make sure the board was aware of.
So oftentimes, we want to talk about different scenarios that could happen with, without, and even with, as we talked about just a second ago, with an agreement. We've bound both parties to terms if a project is built and engages it, but obviously that the company is not, with a 313 agreement, bound to construct the project. So a couple of scenarios
That's a
here.
hypothetical.
That's a hypothetical. So what, the 313 does is secures the additional revenue for the school district if the project goes forward. And so, these scenarios here, talking about what would happen if these varieties, transpired. So scenario one, builds the project as anticipated with a 313. Project is fully taxable for INS tax purposes. As we've talked about, the revenue protections are in place, the supplemental payments are in place. We have a later slide, but I'll go ahead and discuss it here. The financial benefits under 313 for M&O purposes. So those revenue protection supplemental payments are made to the general fund with the flexibility of how to spend them. The two applications would result in about a combined $75 million for Austin ISD over that 10-year period.
Plus the revenue protection.
Plus the revenue protection, yes, that's correct. So site one, to break it out, that's the $1.8 billion in peak taxable value. That's about $64 million for, there we go, $64 million for the school district, assuming that those taxable values are hit, and would result in about $67 million in tax savings for the company. It's real close to about a 50-50 split in the benefit for AISD and NXP. About 48% and change for Austin ISD under that agreement, 51% for NXP. For Site 2, the smaller of the two projects in terms of taxable value, I won't speak to any other aspect of the project, but in terms of the taxable value that they're assuming, it's around $600 million in peak taxable value, resulting in, between the protection payment, supplemental payment, $12 million in payments to Austin ISD. The final tax savings for that project under a 313 agreement would be $9 million for NXP. So actually under that agreement with this application, Austin ISD is taking about 57% of the tax benefit. NXP is taking home about 43% of the initial tax benefit before any payments are made. So ends up being a benefit for Austin, not only in the payments, but also just percentage-wise in the amount of benefit that is being generated under the 313 agreement. There are other aspects to any agreement, not just the financials, but protections that are in place, clauses that cover if certain things happen. David, if you want to mention, just in case there's any kind of breach of these terms that we outline, if you got into it, always what happens if we get halfway down and they've experienced about half of their tax break and decide, no, this isn't for us, we'd like to do something else. There are protections there that we can speak to.
Yes, these are still in draft form, so if Mr. President, if we're going to have detailed discussions about draft contracts, I would ask that we do that in closed session. But I will say generally in public, there are protections. Obviously, if the project doesn't run its full term for any reason, if the improvements are not made, if the company should ever lose the qualification with the comptroller, there are protections to the district. If the company should cut back or fail to again meet the requirements necessary under the agreement, we do have protections. And since the agreement has not been finally approved by the comptroller and therefore is still technically in draft form, if we want to discuss that in more detail, I would ask that we do that in closed session.
all the kind of formal presentation that I have.
So we are happy to answer questions or give any other details that we can.
Thank you all very much. Trustees, any questions? Yes, Trustee Singh.
Thank you for this presentation. So I'm looking at the application, and I was happy to see that there was an increase. I think it was 350 jobs, which is up from what I think we saw originally when this was brought to us. And then I also saw that the average salary for those jobs were going to be 110% of the average manufacturing job, so about $68,000, I think, is what I remember seeing. Now, would that amount increase year to year as the cost of living increases?
Yeah.
So the wages that are outlined in the application, those are the wages that they have to meet at that time. So those aren't, it's not a moving number that's going to grow based on that percentage. So they're beholden to the wages and the number of jobs that have been outlined in the application.
Okay, so are you saying it wouldn't increase? 'Cause
I'm not saying that
If
the
the
salaries, I'm not saying that the
increases,
salaries
yeah.
or number of jobs wouldn't increase based on what NXP wants to do as a business, but in terms of being compliant with the Chapter 313 agreement, what you're seeing before you there, those wages and jobs are what they're beholden to in terms of the reporting that is required annually to the comptroller's office to stay compliant.
Thank you. So NXT might pay them more, but they're only required to pay 68, whether it's year 1 or year 10.
Correct.
Okay.
So, yes.
Got it.
But
Okay.
that's just the minimum for compliance purposes.
Okay, I appreciate that. And is there any way that we could put, could we say we would like to see this built in, that there would be a cost of living increase year to year, or is this just like totally standard? We can't really make any amendments to this?
So all of the wage requirements are dictated by the comptroller's office, and so
Okay.
that's kind of where that oversight and those determinations are made.
Okay, I
There
appreciate that.
are-
Thank you. And then I heard several callers mention that there were not worker protections, built into this. Can you all comment a little bit on that?
I wasn't real clear which worker protections that was referring to. Obviously, the company would be required to continually meet both the number of jobs, quality of jobs, and salaries in order to remain eligible. And the comptroller has the authority, if a company should fail to meet those requirements, to simply revoke the agreement.
Okay,
And if that were to ever happen, the property would be taxable.
okay,
So I think the company has very strong incentives to always be in compliance. It's ultimately the comptroller that has the authority to revoke or, to require that you are actually meeting the requirements of both statute and regulation in that regard. And so if it's worker protections in terms of number of jobs, quality and salary, I think those are protected. I wasn't sure if there were other protections being built into. Obviously, the company would have to comply with all safety requirements, et cetera,
okay.
in their workplace. So if someone had something in mind other than that, I didn't pick
Okay.
up on it.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I had another question. So I really appreciate that you laid out very simply what the payment would be to the district, and what the cost savings would be for NXP for Site 1 and Site 2. And then I just wanted to double check. So for Site 1, it would be $64 million to the district, and then for Site 2, it's $12 million, right? So that's a total of 76.
Correct.
Plus the revenue protection.
Well,
does that include the
that's the combination of both of those, the revenue protection payments
So
and
that
the
does
supplemental
include-
payments.
Okay, and
yeah.
the revenue protection payment, is that, can you explain real quick what that was again?
Yes, as briefly as possible, and I'm happy then, if you want
Yeah.
to go deeper, that's fine. So what we look at is, what would the school district what revenue would be generated off the full value of the project under the school finance system versus the scenario with the limited value of $100 million of taxable value, what revenue would be generated off of that.
Okay.
We compare those two scenarios. Any time in which the school district is worse off with the limitation in place, meaning worse off having entered into the agreement, we calculate that amount under an agreement, and with a signed agreement, NXP agrees to pay you that amount. So we're estimating at this time those amounts of payments based on the taxable value of the project, the tax rate of the school district, and the school finance system that is in place right now. That combined with the supplemental payment is where we get to the $75 million over the life of the agreement.
Okay, and then so is the net?
Can I have a comment there? And just to be clear, under the agreement, that responsibility to hold the district harmless is dynamic. If there are changes in the school finance system, the duty to hold the district harmless to protect your revenue also has to modify to fit whatever changes may be made in the school finance system.
Okay, and so could you, out of that $75 or $76 million, can you tell me which part of that is the revenue? Like, how much is that revenue protection chunk and how much is the non?
So for Site 1, Site 1 is if you allow me to round, $64 million in total payments to the school district. I believe we have $18 million is under revenue protection payment. And then we've got about $45 million is in supplemental payment.
Okay. So the $18 million we would, is it correct to say that we would have gotten that $18 million from somewhere anyway?
So that's where we get into then the next layer down of the program in school finance is the, did you want to answer that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a yes or no.
It's a hypothetical. If the plant were built
Okay, yes.
without a 313 and without the CHIPS Act funding, if it were simply on the tax rolls,
Yeah.
that's how much the district would generate and keep over the life of the agreement. That would be the net benefit to the district. I think your CFO, Mr.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Ramos,
trying to get to is like, what is the net benefit to us
I think
for each site?
it's the revenue protection holds you harmless, and then the actual payment is the true additional money.
Okay, so that $45 million for the Site 1.
And then I would always say their taxes on the INS side are a net benefit to the district because remember, the property will always be taxable for INS purposes.
Okay, and then the supplemental payment on Site 2 would be how much?
Was $6.1 million.
Okay, thank you. Okay, appreciate that, thank you.
I had a quick question. Is there a way to calculate what that INS payment would be for if they build the plant?
I would have to know what the INS rate would be. I'm sure your CFO could calculate that simply by looking at the increased or the incremental value of the investment. And then whatever the INS rate in any given year may be.
Yeah.
Mr. Ramos said that we can calculate that and we can get that to our board and put it on our 313 website.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I do have one.
Sure.
Okay, so if we didn't do the 313, would there be any immediate impact on Austin taxpayers? No, if we did do, hold on, let me think. Yeah, if we did approve the 313, would there be any immediate impact on Austin taxpayers?
By just entering into an agreement, there is no impact on the taxpayer at all.
One way or the other.
So then there's the next, then there's with an agreement and the project is built, is there an impact on the taxpayer? Yes, because if the project comes and is built We've added $1.8 billion to the tax base to service the bond that
INS.
just passed on the INS side. So the great thing about valuations on the INS side is the more value there is, the less effort it takes to service that debt. So by adding $1.8 billion plus another $600 million if they build both projects, $2.4 billion added to the tax base, that alleviates the pressure on local taxpayers to service that INS tax rate and the bond that was just passed. On the M&O side, there is
It's additional revenue that the district doesn't have to raise from other taxpayers because you're functionally saving it. You're netting it out of your recapture.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Singh. Trustees, other questions?
Dr. Reach, in the community engagement, I've read through all of the notes and appreciate the summary, but one of the things that was discussed was possible programs, and I would love to hear more about just possible things that would impact students, student learning. We talked about possible employment opportunities. How does that intersect with this, and what was discussed?
Yeah, so Dr. Fannin joined us and kind of went through what are we currently doing with CTE, and then kind of heard some other ideas and talked through what could be done. And so I think some of the major focus is on how we, again, recognizing that if this was a partnership that we were going to do with NXP, how are we building out our own manufacturing pipeline, both with ACC and with potentially NXP, and why I don't want to say this in front of NXP, but we also recognize that there's other manufacturing companies around here to where our build-out of manufacturing program can also open our doors to other manufacturing groups here that our students can benefit from. So we talked about how we could build out, some of the, and I'm not going to explain any of it as well as I know our partners in XP or some of our CT staff could, but the technology that we need to actually let those kids practice while they're at the school. The ability to actually bring in some of those test machines and the tools to service those machines, and how funding could be utilized for that. Because there are classroom needs that are unique. It's not that we can just start doing manufacturing in a classroom that was set up for math, and it wouldn't be aligned to our own ed specs, education specifications anyway. So we recognize that there's unique classroom needs that are associated with this. We did also talk about the internships and the alignment with college, because when we think of any type of, when we start going through what could be, one thing that we always like to think about is our P-TECH programs. What are those P-TECH programs that we can really build out so these students are starting in ninth grade, starting their college careers while still in their high school, going with a partner like ACC, like HT, who both have a strong desire to build more of these with Austin ISD. And ACC has already expressed that they have a strong desire at looking at manufacturing as a next step. And then actually partnering with these businesses to where internships are provided while they're at AISD. And then on-the-site job experience is provided while they're at the first one was why they're at AISD. The next one would be why they're at the university. And then really the long-term goal, and what we always hope with any of these programs, is that the student actually goes straight into working for that company once they've graduated. So we talked about that, but I also want to be fair. We talked about not just manufacturing for CTE, but our whole CTE programming, and recognize that if there was funding that we could add, it's not just building out manufacturing at this school or this school. It's how do we increase our outreach to our middle school students on CTE. One of those things that we always want to do more for, and especially now that we can access more CTE dollars at the middle school level, which wasn't always the case, we recognize that's a big room for growth for AISD, for all districts, but for AISD, that would also bring in more state funding. We talked about how we can expand, that even if there's internships that companies may not be able to provide, how can we actually start providing some workforce partnerships? And again, kind of expanding past the manufacturing. We know that, Ms. Hosak has been doing work in Aikens, and I apologize, I can't think of the other school. I think it's Navarro, with teachers, in how we will actually be hiring those teachers into our own group. We've had conversations on the same thing around the AISD police, because we do have some law programs at some of our schools and how we could start building out programming for that. So we've had multiple discussions on just how we can grow CTE with dollars that weren't there before and that aren't just those dedicated state dollars. And then, I think I'll pause there. If there's more questions on it, I'd love to talk about it. What I'd really like to do, and I apologize that we didn't have this ready, is let me ask Dr. Fannin to kind of talk about what are some of those long-term goals. And again, I'd be happy to share that with the board and put that up on our website as well.
Okay, yeah, I'd appreciate knowing and understanding that it's aside and apart from the 313 specifically, but a possible use of the funding and a possible partnership, so I appreciate that. And second question is, what have you done to figure out if there's interest, where there's interest, if this is something that people are actually seeking?
Yeah. So Dr. Fannin has been working with all of her CTE staff and colleagues at all of our campuses. And what we know right now is that there is interest for this type of programming and this type of alignment at 2 campuses. Northeast Early College High School has a desire for building out manufacturing. And then Anderson High School already has some of this technology available to where they have the classes, they have some of this machinery. What they don't necessarily have is the alignment to the next level. And so that's something that we want to look at, really focusing on Northeast first and see where the opportunity lies there. Also, as you probably saw on one of the maps, Northeast does have a good location to one of those sites on the map. And so that's where we want to focus. But then we also want to see how could this possibly be replicated at another school in the future, like Anderson. And then, of course, working with ACC as they potentially build out programming that really bridges between us and the career.
Okay, thank you for that. And interest, I hear you saying that Dr. Fannin's been talking with staff, but have we done anything to gauge interest among families, students?
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, and so with the staff, because of what is the interest from the students.
Got it. Thank you.
I do need to find out what we've done to gauge interest from parents, recognizing that parents, especially when we're talking, because really, kids are making, we all know this, they're making these decisions at middle school. Which is why I said earlier, we need to start getting at middle school, start getting programming there. And parents typically play a very large role in working with their student on what are they going to be doing while they're at high school. So I need to get back to you on that one, see what we're doing to outreach with parents as well. But this is information that we've been getting from the students at that campus who have interest in this programming.
Thank you.
To Trustee Boswell's pointing to Trustee Ashey's raised eyebrows over here, before we move forward with those programming pieces, we will have the engagement component because we know that we've had some instances where programs have been plopped on campuses without the engagement component, thus a lack of buy-in. And so we want to make sure that, again, we have the support of the campus students, the campus families, as well as the administration. So, again, we get full implementation with fidelity so that, again, our industry partners and the campuses benefit.
Good. Trustees, any other questions? I do know, do we have any of our trustees online?
No, Trustee Foster had to drop off. Do you have the message?
Yes, yes. And then I wanted to read a statement. Yeah, very rarely when most of our trustees are here all the time, but we had one trustee, Ofelia Zapata, that asked us to read a statement around Chapter 313, so I wanted to do that on her behalf and wanted to read what she had sent us. And this is from Trustee Ofelia Zapata. I want to make clear that I am absolutely opposed to Chapter 313 as a program in the NXP proposal to Austin ISD. I will be voting against it. This program has been shown to be destructive to our state budget, potential funding for schools, and therefore is destructive to Austin schools and students. If we as a board believe a program is harmful at any level, we have an obligation to oppose it. We don't teach our school children to make decisions that help themselves but hurt other people. We should do the same as a board and set the example. There are other programs like city and county incentives and the CHIPS Act that have high wage job creation and worker safety standards, and NXP is free to pursue those sources of public funding. But Chapter 313 includes very few of those protections, and it has no protection for construction workers. The CHIPS Act does not require a local Chapter 313 agreement. Our job as a school board is not to figure out which industries we should subsidize. Our job is to create a strong public school system. I represent the east and southeast parts of town, and I have an obligation to protect the most vulnerable students. And I firmly believe that draining money from our system to benefit corporations hurts my students. I will not participate in a harmful program, and I will be voting against this deal. So I want to make sure that was read into the record. And then I don't know if there's some of the information that y'all want to respond to, or I would encourage you all to set up a meeting with Trustee Zapata in case there's some clarifications there that you all like to do. But trustees, are there any other questions, issues, concerns? Dr. Reach?
No, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here tonight.
And we hope to hear, the last thing I would say is we hope to hear positive news from the comptroller in the near future.
Oh,
So,
thank you for that. I was just going to remind the board that we have two executive sessions coming up, one on Tuesday, November 15th, and the other one on Thursday, November 17th. In case there's some questions, I think Trustee Singh, you had mentioned a couple of things around negotiations that David had mentioned that are done in an executive session. So we have two other executive session opportunities. And obviously, our attorneys can talk to our board members individually if they need to.
Sure.
So thank you all very much. This ends the section on the information reports from the administration. And at this time, we're going to move into the preview of the upcoming regular board agendas. This will allow the public and trustees the opportunity to review the agenda items that will be considered for a vote in the next regular board meeting. AIC staff is available to answer any questions for us tonight and for tonight's preview. And so we'll begin tonight with item 8, which is the agenda preview for business and finance. And trustees, are there any questions on these agenda items? If there is not, I'm going to move to section 9, which is facilities. Trustees, are there any questions on these items, including HVAC and electrical improvements at Campbell Elementary School, bus charging stations, and our approval of our 2022 bond program construction delivery methods? If there are no questions, I will move to section 10, community engagement, and ask if there are any questions regarding the one agenda item there is the renaming of the Wynn Elementary School. And trustees, if there are no questions, I'll move to section 11, human resources, and see if you have any questions regarding 4 items dealing with the termination of employees. And hearing no questions, I will move to section 12, policy, and that has one item around FNE local regarding students' rights and responsibilities regarding pregnant students. Hearing no questions, I will move to section 13, other. And trustees, any questions on these items regarding agreements with UT, the University of Texas at Austin, the City of Austin, and yeah, those 2 items. So hearing none, trustees, any other questions? And if not, that will conclude the regular agenda preview. Secretary Singh, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion by Secretary Singh and an enthusiastic second by Trustee Ashe to adjourn, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion passes by all those on the dais. This meeting is now adjourned at 9:38 p.m. Good evening.
Previous time.